Here we are. We're streaming now. Here we are. Commenting on the decline of Western civilization. Hello. My name is Jonathan Sanderson. I go by the Canadian Commie. I am here streaming Tuesday, 6 to 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time as normal. For those of you who are listening at home, we here at the Canadian Commie, you can find us at thecanadiancommie.com. We live stream Tuesday, 6 to 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can come on in and join us as we comment on the decline of Western civilization, which is what we are doing. The thesis of this channel is that, hey, guess what? Capitalism doesn't work. It doesn't work for very clear reasons, very obvious reasons that more and more people are becoming aware of, that class consciousness is rising, and that there are things that we should replace it with. There are ideas and thoughts that we should pursue and we should actually think about. And as we're moving forward, it's just becoming more and more obvious. Just becoming more and more obvious. As this situation with Luigi Mangione continues to ripple outward, right? As it begins to continue echoing outward and ripple outward, right? People are beginning to see little tendrils and little things that it connects to, right? That people are understanding. More and more, they're understanding. Wait a minute. The healthcare industry in the United States, the insurance industry, the way that works in the United States is a wholly illegitimate enterprise. There is absolutely nothing legitimate about the healthcare industry that exists in the United States. It should be removed. It should be replaced. What should it be replaced with, you might ask yourself? Well, a single-payer healthcare system that literally every other country that considers itself a civilized country, that has wealth and the means to be able to do so, and some countries that don't even have the wealth to do so, manage to do. And people are beginning to recognize and realize, hey, wait a minute. If this is an illegitimate system, what makes it illegitimate? And if this is an illegitimate system, are there other systems within our society that are as illegitimate? Things like, I don't know, your landlord? Are there other people and other positions and other titles that exist in your society that are simply middlemen and worthless parasites that should not exist? And the deeper you dig and the deeper you go and the more you investigate and the more you think about it and the more you read and the more you learn, the more you come to understand that there is actually a central problem, a centralized issue, one centralized concern, which is that there are a small group of owners who own all the land and all the buildings and all the property, and a vastly larger group of workers who own nothing of consequence and have to sell themselves to those people in order to survive and live. We should do away with it. Welcome. Join me. Anemone, good to see you. Good evening. Austin, a pleasure. Austin writes, how's it going? I just finished Left-Wing Communism and Infantile Disorder, and it's an absolute banger. Yeah, of course. Lenin didn't mess around. He didn't mince words. He was the leader of that party for a good reason. Nilo, good to see you too, my man. Hope you're doing well. It is now official. United Healthcare CEO killing latest. This is from ABC News. Luigi Mangione charged with first-degree murder as terrorism in New York. You guys know my position. It has not altered one bit. I am of the opinion that Luigi Mangione will die in custody. that he is a patsy who is being set up for this crime because he fit the profile. That the story you'll never hear come out of the New York Times or the New York City Police or anybody ever is that they probably rounded up 1,000 people, right, following tips and following all this. They had the entire police force who, doesn't really do anything in the first place. And so here they are actually doing something, rounding up hundreds of people, maybe 1,000 people. And they expanded their search, right? Once they realized that this guy was probably out of the city, they expanded it to the states outside of New York, which let them round up more people. And until finally they got a hit. They got somebody who sort of fit the pieces, and the pieces fit together. And they were like, oh, okay, cool, this is our guy. Right? I think the actual shooter got away. And I think that Luigi is a patsy. And I'm holding on to innocent until proven guilty, just like his lawyer says. His lawyer, the absolute character that he is, which I love this guy. I love this guy's lawyer. Every time I see this guy, I'm just like, yeah, this guy's gonna do right by Luigi for sure. Radio Halifax, good to see you. Good evening to you. And then, of course, in the wake of all of this, we are all supposed to really super pay attention. Hey guys, did you know that there's aliens? U.S. government? There's aliens. Hey everybody, stop paying attention to Luigi Mangione. Stop paying attention to that story. Pay attention to all the aliens. Here we go. White House advisor says government has solved drone mystery. That there was a whole bunch of drones that were flying around New Jersey. And what's the answer that they gave them? They say that I would remind people there are millions of drones that fly over the skies of New York, of the United States routinely. Thousands and thousands that have registered with the FFA. A lot of them do good work for public safety and for the public good, such as law enforcement drones, commercial drones. To date, there is no sense and no indication that there is a national security or public safety risk posed by any of this activity. So we're just going to normalize that. We're just going to absolutely normalize all the idea of having all these drones flying overhead, right? That's a great thing for us to normalize, right? Aren't we happy that we're living in a society where suddenly 1,000 drones can be flying over your city, shining big, gigantic, bright lights, and that's just supposed to be normal now? We're all supposed to be like, oh yeah, be not afraid, right? For sure. I'm for sure down for that. Gabriel, good to see you. Isaac, yeah, somebody turned him in for a Big Mac. I mean, that to me is like how the power structure is responding to this crisis, this assassination, as it's unfolding. More stories are happening that are linked to it that really reveal how terrified the power structure is, and then B, how accurate my analysis of the situation in the United States is, i.e., there are no laws. Laws don't exist in the United States, certainly not for you or me, or certainly not for the rich, rather. Like, that the laws that exist are merely threats. They don't apply to the rich, and they don't apply if the rich want them applied to the working class and to the poor, right? This story, in my view, is just absolutely, like, this should be the biggest red flag any red-blooded American should have. If you're an American citizen of any stripe, I don't care if you're like a far left woke, like blue hair, we're fighting for the right for abortions, or I don't care if you're a far right, got a big GMC Jimmy cowboy hat, hands off my guns, don't tread on me stickers everywhere. This story should absolutely make your blood run cold and make you look at the power structure and recognize and realize, oh yeah, we're not going to vote our way out of this. There's no law, there's no justice, there's no institution that has any credibility, which is why the incoming administration is going to tear most of it down, because it's all illegitimate in the first place, and it doesn't actually work for your benefit whatsoever. And so there's people who are thinking like, well, if it's illegitimate, then why don't we get rid of it, right? Brianna Boston, the Brianna Boston story, she's got a GoFundMe, raised over $30,000 after felony charge for delayed, denied, deposed remark. If you don't know what this story is, this is a Florida woman who, upon being rejected for receiving care, i.e. she didn't receive the service she paid for, because that's what insurance is supposed to be, right? You're supposed to pay for insurance, and then when you need insurance, you cash it in and you get access to the service that you've already paid for. That's the concept behind it. That's the idea behind it. One would think that withholding that service is actually a violation of the contract, is actually a breach of contract, and that the insurance companies are actually criminals and a criminal cartel that should be all rounded up and the entire industry should be dismantled. One would think that, right? It seems quite obvious to anybody who's not living with that system that that's exactly what it is, and that's exactly what's happening. That a bunch of ghoulish psychopaths have wedged themselves between the citizens and doctors in a way to siphon wealth away from people, and are willing to watch children and the elderly and people who are in desperate positions just die if it means they can get an extra penny, right? Like one of the things that has come out fairly recently about this Brian Thompson fellow is that he absolutely endorsed this AI system, completely knowing that it was going to reject huge amounts of people from the system. Like, they knew what they were doing. They understood fully that it was going to lead to people dying. They knew that. They fully understood that what they were doing was exchanging blood for money. They knew that that's what they were doing. So the more I learn and the more I see how hard the system is working to try to demonize Luigi, the more they keep trying to convince us that they actually got their man, right? The more I see the absolute abject corruption of this system and the absolute necessity for us to rebel entirely from it. There's no reason to continue participating at all, at any level in this system, except in order to sabotage it. Because it's never going to work for your interests. It's never going to do anything for your benefit. And this case in particular, like during a phone call with Blue Cross Blue Shield, Brianna Boston, 42, Lakeland, Florida, ended the conversation by saying delay, deny, depose. The same 3 words found on bullet casings linked to the shooting of United CEO Brian Thompson. She also added, "You people are next." Now she's facing up to 15 years in prison for simply uttering these words as they're being interpreted as a threat. I mean, even if they are being interpreted as a threat, you're saying them to an organization that's actively murdering people on purpose for money. Like, the insurance companies are terrorist organizations, like most institutions in the United States at this point. And so how do terrorist organizations respond to people trying to stand up to them? How do you think they're going to respond? What makes this very interesting, like, this is a very clear First Amendment violation, right? Like, who gives a shit? Who gives 2 shits whatsoever if it's a threat, right? The First Amendment specifically exists in order to protect citizens from the government. That citizens are allowed to say whatever they would like to say, right? And that the government is not to get involved in policing speech of any kind, and yet here we are. The government is getting heavily involved, which, hardly surprising this is happening in Florida, right? Florida is just absolutely descending into a fascist shithole, and is absolutely descending into just, like, at least the first time fascism showed up, it looked good, right? They were fashionable. They had cool outfits. Now it's just these loser hicks wearing like dumb CEO suits. DeSantis he literally wears heels so that he can look a little taller. It's just getting childishly embarrassing. And of course, Luigi Mangione has a higher approval rating than most presidents. So this sort of leads, and this healthcare concern, right? This healthcare concern is not just happening in America. It looks a little different here in Canada, right? Because Canada back in the 60s and the 70s actually managed to get a first single-payer healthcare system. But what we are experiencing, and what the Europeans are experiencing, the rest of the Western world that managed to get a single-payer healthcare system in, what we are experiencing is a dismantling of that system. The British are experiencing it the most, obviously, the dismantling of the NHS. But here in Canada, right, from the National Post, Canadians faced longest ever healthcare wait times in 2024, study finds. The strategy is to steadily defund and steadily make these systems unworkable, and then sell to the public that the solution isn't to refund these programs and actually make them work properly as they used to work properly, right? That's not the goal. The goal is to pitch privatization and to say, oh, we can actually make this more streamlined if you privatize these sections. Privatize this, privatize that. We can have a two-tiered system, right? We can have that. And just steadily erode and steadily erode and steadily erode and steadily erode until finally you're just looking down the barrel of the gun that is an insurance company denying your medication. Just basically telling you, oh yeah, that insulin medication, yeah, that 20 years ago we would literally give you for free and you wouldn't even have to like sign any paperwork or do anything. Yeah, now we're rejecting you for that, so you can't get insulin as a diabetic, right? Joe, good to see you. XD, good to see you. Like, it's happening here in Canada. Every single political party is on board for it. There isn't a single political party that is interested in stopping it. Everybody throughout the entire electoral system is on board. And it's going to continue that way until more dramatic and more serious things are done. Like here in Canada, we're voting Pierre Poilievre in. Like we're going to be voting a hard right arch conservative in, while most of the provinces in Canada are conservative. So it's going to be a disaster. We're going to experience a rapid reform of our healthcare systems. Nilo writes, should the hernia hospital tells the story of Canadian healthcare quite well. Private healthcare paid for with taxpayer money. I'm unfamiliar with the story, but I mean, it is happening. We've got privatized services here in Toronto as well. And I mean, it's the obvious result of it is that care is going to increase in price. Like it's just going to happen. Oh, this is the name of a hospital. Should ice? Should ice? I mean, are they telling you that they should ice because they're not going to pay for pain medications? And like, we are going to see these dismantlings that are happening, right? These dismantlings that are occurring are absolutely a sign of the breaking apart of what unifies the country, right? Like eventually it's just going to be law of the jungle, right? It's just going to be private healthcare. Insurance is not even going to be workable. Like you're not even going to be able to get insurance soon. Your job isn't going to pay for your insurance. You're not going to actually be able to get access to insurance. No one is going to insure anybody because insurance won't be profitable anymore. And that the only people who are actually going to have access to healthcare throughout the Western world. And it's going to happen across America. It's already happening across America, frankly. The only people who are actually going to get access to healthcare are the rich. And that's what's coming for the rest of the Western world. And so it's small wonder that what we're seeing and what we saw throughout, I mean, for goodness sakes, we've got the United Health CEO admits that no one would design a system like ours. Yeah, of course. I mean, no one except you guys, right? You worthless parasites who murder children for money. But in the wake of this, the French government collapses, the German government collapses. Here in Canada, Chrystia Freeland, the deputy prime minister, has now resigned. And we've got new polling coming out of Canada that has the Trudeau administration polling at 11%. Like 11%. Like, how is it that this man is still the leader of this party, polling about those kinds of numbers, right? Like, he's going to go into this election with only 11% of Canadians saying that the Trudeau Liberals should be re-elected. This is going to be a sweep. Like, it's going to be a sweep. And it's going... And I mean, there's historical precedent for this. That's how Canadians are, right? That's how Canadians are. We always vote in these big, gigantic sweeps. And of course, Donald J. Trump. The great state of Canada is stunned as the finance minister resigns, or was fired from her position by Governor Justin Trudeau. Her behavior was totally toxic and not at all conducive to making deals which are good for the very unhappy citizens of Canada. She will not be missed. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of old news from the Trump administration. The Trump administration really did not enjoy dealing with Chrystia Freeland. Did not enjoy dealing with Chrystia Freeland over the NAFTA arguments. Joe writes, Trump has already dropped his faux populist rhetoric. No need for it now. Yeah, I think he's doing things like calling Canada the great state of Canada and saying Governor Justin Trudeau. I think just because his base loves it. And I think he thinks it's funny. And I think that's all it is. Like, I think that he's just sitting there being like, this is funny. And I think that he did not like his dealings with Canada and his first administration. I don't think he cares too much for his dealings with Canada now. I wouldn't be too surprised to find out that a big reason why Chrystia Freeland is resigning is because she's actually being pushed out. That there's a lot of different, like, I've always kind of known that Chrystia Freeland was going to move on, and she's probably going to land in NATO. Like, I only have like whispers and like just a gleaming of sort of behind the scenes. Like, she might not, obviously, but my gut tells me she'll probably end up with a NATO job. And that's sort of where her trajectory has been. Like, she's been leaving the party for a long time. And I think that she gets pushed out because now we're moving into a Donald Trump administration. Now we're going into like, and this is going to be a very bullish Trump administration. You watch the interviews that Donald Trump is giving, and he's not, there's like no bluster anymore. That's something I think that Rogan pointed out. And I've seen other people point out. Like, his interviews are very like, he's just saying things and stating things, and he's not convincing anybody. Right? Like, that the first time around, he was always trying to convince people. He was convincing people he's great. Right? Well, now he's going in and he's not convincing anybody. He knows. He's aware of the position that he has, and he's more aware of what it is that he's going to go in there to do. And I feel like he's having these conversations with other leaders and world leaders, and he's just telling them directly, we're going to do this, and you're on board or you're not. And we're America. We don't give a shit what you think. And it's just going to be like that. And I wouldn't be too surprised to find out that Donald Trump had a pretty frank conversation with Trudeau and was like, we're going to put tariffs on you. Like, it's going to get real serious. And if you want to negotiate with us, great. Chrystia Freeland, gone. We're not even talking to her anymore. And it's just going to be like that, you know? And that's going to be Trump's entire administration. Like, he's not going to actually... yeah, long defiant. Good to see you, my man. Bullish or bull in a china shop. Yeah, it is going to be like a bull in a china shop kind of thing. Like, it's just going to be like that. Nothing's sacred, right? There's not, they don't have any compunction. They're not going to sit there and be like, oh, but we have to care for the history of the Department of Education. Like, that to me was, and should be, frankly, the wake-up call for everybody. I feel like I've said this before, but it is definitely worth restating. Like, he put Linda McMahon. He's giving Linda McMahon, wife of Vince McMahon of the WWE, is going to head the Department of Education. And that has everybody being like, she has no experience heading this department and all that, and everybody's just hunting down the wrong path, chasing a dog down barking up the wrong tree. They're serious when they're saying they're going to shut that department down. Linda McMahon is not going in there to run that department. She's going in there to shut that department down, and they're going to do it, and it's going to be a lot faster than you think. And that the only skill that Linda McMahon needs to have, the only skill that anybody they're appointing to any of these departments needs to have, is the ability to walk up to thousands of people and say, you no longer work here. You are fired. Leave. That's the only skill they need to have. Dave writes, he knows, good to see you, by the way, Dave. He knows how the game works now. Well, I think he's more, I mean, he said it himself, that when he got in, he was sort of overwhelmed by appointments. And I think he thought it was going to be more like gunslinging decision-making. But the truth is that it's a lot of appointing people, right? There's too much for one person to do. You have to appoint people. And he had no idea who to appoint. Well, now he has an idea of who to appoint. And maybe they're not good ideas, right? Like, whenever I listen to these guys talk, whenever I listen to Donald Trump talk, whenever I listen to any of these Republicans talk, you know what it sounds like? It sounds like the decline of Western civilization. It sounds like the talk of dismantling. There's a lot of dismantling that's going to happen over this term, for sure. And they're going to be ruthless. Like, for goodness sakes, when you've got like Elon Musk and Vijan Bashashvaj, this guy, when you got these two fucking losers being given the nod to have a Department of Governmental, what's the E stand for in that? The Doge Department. The Department of Government Efficiency. That's right. Cutely named Doge. Just the like, these people have no shame, and they have no capacity to see how embarrassing they are, right? Like, the future generations are going to be like, so wait, the guys that went in there and did all this fucking damage, they literally called it Doge? Like, that's how big that's how huge of losers these guys actually are? Oh, okay. You've got an entire, like, Department of Government Efficiency that's being erected. That, like, how is that anything but an inquisition? How is this anything but an inquisition? Right? That what Trump has been saying for the longest time has been drain that swamp, right? It's what he gets elected on. And it looks like he's serious. And it looks like there's a lot of, like, when he gives this friggin' defense, the Department of Defense nod goes to a Fox News correspondent. Like, how is that anything other than a big FU to the Department of Defense, to the military? Like, if I'm a 4-star general, I'm looking at that being like, oh, this guy's coming after us. Like, how is it anything other than that? Dilo writes, if they deport tons of migrant workers, the downward pressure on wages will have to come from somewhere else. Yeah, I mean, we'll see how that goes. Like, the Biden administration deported more migrants than the Trump administration did the first time around. And like, it's tough to know what Trump's, like, where's the line between his rhetoric and his action, right? Like, where is the like, how serious is he actually, right? Because like, he was talking that same exact game the first time around. Nothing's actually changed on that line. It's not, he didn't even really ramp his rhetoric up that much, right? He just knows what his base wants to hear. And then when you actually look at the raw numbers, Obama and Biden, they deported more migrants than Trump did. So what happened there? What's the story there? And the truth of it might just simply be that Trump didn't actually care that much about that. That he just knew what people wanted to hear. And then when it, push came to shove, he was just like, yeah, but we got other shit to do. And so we'll see, right? And that's what makes Trump so difficult, is that he's so erratic, right? You don't actually know what he's going to do. And you're not actually going to know what he's going to do until after it's already happened, right? And like, it's tough to get a sense of what his actual views are and what his actual positions are. Like, this whole tariff talk. Like, how serious is he about any of this tariff talk? Or is he just using it as a cudgel in order to bully people and to threaten them to do what he wants, right? How serious is he? And do you want to call his bluff, right? Certainly the Chinese think he's serious. The Chinese have sanctioned certain precious metals that are used in military equipment to the United States. Speaking of that, actually, I've actually got a couple of really great. First of all, China executes former official in $412 million corruption case. So, to all my Western Marxists who are sitting there being like, China is actually capitalist, right? Like, I don't know what you guys need to see, man. Like, I don't know what you need to actually take a look at. We've got China executing people for fraud. We've got, oh, come now, I had another really good one. I'm the greatest. I'm the greatest at this. I know exactly what I'm doing. We literally have Xi Jinping saying out loud that we need to start going after companies. We need to start going after corruption. We need to turn the knife inward, as I believe the phrase that he used. I'm gonna find it. There it is. Yeah. China's Xi Jinping says Communist Party must turn the knife inward to root out corruption. Like, this seems to be Xi Jinping's like whole shtick. Is that they know that capitalism is a corrupting force. What have I always said on this cast about China? Like, they know, they more than anybody are well aware of the corrupting force that is capitalism. That they have had to negotiate with capitalism at the end of a barrel of a gun. And now they've got enough power that they can actually look out internationally and go like, oh, like, the Americans can't really come over here and fuck with us. Like, if they were to do so, it would be a major conflagration. It would be huge, and it would collapse their economy. It would cause major problems for them. It's not like the 1960s and 70s anymore. It's not the Vietnam War. It's not the Cambodian War anymore. Like, China has the capacity to be able to fight back in a significant way. And so now China can say, oh, if the international bourgeois can't mess with us, maybe it's time to turn on our own bourgeois. Maybe we do need to go after some internal class politics or some internal, maybe we do have to do some class struggle internally now. And classically, of course, the Western Marxists will still they'll think that it's false, right? Because the view of the Chinese Communist Party is that it's corrupt because of what happened between Mao and Deng. Like, what do you? It's just. Yeah, Western Marxists going to say they executed him only because he stepped on other capitalist tails. Exactly, right? Western Marxists seem to only support revolutions that fail. And the ones that are successful, they just ignore. Long Defiant writes, a writer made the observation that security provided by autonomous drones is the anti-guillotine. The wealthy will become unbeatable if we accept those. Currently being tested in Gaza. I mean, we'll see. Like, one of the things that I think about a lot, like, those drones are not free. Like, they take resources to use. And it seems to me like all of the wealth, like the trickle-down effect is going to essentially be the wealthy building security apparatus for themselves as things get worse and worse and worse. And there just kind of comes a point where you start asking, like, is this actually the world that you want to create? Is this really the world that you want to live in? Where you can't go anywhere under threat of assassination, you can't do anything. You have to constantly have, like, drones surveilling and, like, big sweeps and all of this crazy shit. You have to have a huge security detail. And it's all just because you have this kooky little ideology that says I deserve to have another $100 million in my bank account. It's just kooky. Like, the more you think about it, we are actually ending up in, like, this position. There's this great comic that I found that's just like, so for those of you who are just listening, there's a man in a top hat, obviously a rich guy, in a guillotine, and somebody is just holding on to the string to the blade of the guillotine, and the man with the hat says, "Stop, please stop. I don't understand. All I did was extract your labor's value and hoard it for myself. I feasted and rolled in money while you and your loved ones suffered." Okay, when I say it out loud, the other guy says, yeah. Like, we're getting to a point now where it's obvious. It's very straightforward what is actually happening. And all of the obfuscation is falling away. And I do think that there is a segment of the capitalist class that has been deluding themselves, that has been sitting there, and they drank the Kool-Aid. They bought into the idea of capitalism, and they bought into the idea of their own greatness, and they bought into this propagandistic idea. And even these guys are starting to go like you see Peter Thiel stuttering and sputtering, unable to answer a basic question about what's going on because he's come to realize, and he's having a little dawning moment that, oh, my own philosophy and my own worldview is beginning to turn against me. That if I'm genuinely serious that it's the law of the jungle and it's every man for themselves and everyone has to pull themselves up by their bootstraps and do, okay, well then what's the philosophy that stops them from putting a gun in your back? And why are they wrong? Right? If it's just every man for themselves and it's just everybody do what they have to do in order to survive and be an entrepreneur, well then why is this guy wrong? And they don't have a response to it because their own worldview justifies the vigilante actions. And I think that's what's important to understand about the religion of capitalism, where we've ended up, is that Luigi Mangione, based entirely on their own ideology, is a hero. That he stood up for himself. He pulled himself up by his bootstraps. He saw that there was an injustice, and he knew that there was something that he had to do, and he went and he got it done. And that the only negative consequence to him is that the people he struck out against have more power and resources than he does. That's it. But other people can do the same thing. And that's according to their own logic. Because once you start dismantling the system and start telling everybody it's every man for themselves and it's all just hyper individualism, well, then you can't actually tell people why it's wrong. Like, what moral justification, what basis do they have to argue against the idea that what Luigi Mangione did was wrong? And they don't have one. They don't have one. Baldy McNosehair, good to see you. What are my thoughts on Chrystia Freeland resigning? I touched very briefly on that. I think that Chrystia Freeland's always kind of had one foot out the door. She's she understands that the ship is sinking, right? Like, the Trudeau administration's not going to make it through the next election cycle, and that's basically a guarantee. I think that she has always been in pursuit of her own interests and power. I suspect, and this is, I don't have the document. I don't have the like ha 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 kind of thing. But from what I glean and what I kind of hear about Chrystia Freeland, I think that she's going to end up in a NATO job, because she is the one who has always been very forward. She's always been very hawkish on Ukraine. Like, she's always been very hawkish on the Ukraine file, which makes sense. You read her dissertation, you see her family history, you see what organizations she's a part of. It makes all the sense in the world. Her grandfather was literally a Nazi collaborator. She definitely has far right views when it comes to Ukraine and Ukraine's history and where Ukraine stands. And so it makes sense that she would end up being in a far right Nazi adjacent organization, right? And that would be sort of her trajectory. I also think there's the other side of it. We were just talking about Donald Trump's response to it. And I think that Donald Trump hates Chrystia Freeland. I think that Trump and Freeland had negotiations back in his first term over NAFTA. And I think he just really hated the shit out of her. And now he's coming in. And this term, Trump seems to have a clearer idea of how to execute his agenda. Like, I think the first term he was confused. He had no idea what he was doing. He was overwhelmed. And I think that all I think that's right. Oh, he actually won an election he didn't think he was going to win. He had no idea how to govern. He'd never done it before. And it was just a cavalcade of nonsense. And his big takeaway from Chrystia Freeland was, I hate this woman. I'm not interested in dealing with this woman again. And now he's coming in and he's actually got a clear idea and a clearer vision of what he wants to accomplish and what he wants to do and what he's going to execute on. And I bet you he had a phone call with Justin Trudeau and he told him straight up, if I have to talk to Chrystia Freeland, I'm putting a 25% tariff on everything that comes from Canada. And he probably just told it to him blunt. And so I bet you Chrystia Freeland got pushed out of that position. There were rumblings already that Chrystia Freeland was going to be replaced in her position, that they were going to do a cabinet shuffle. And I bet you that Chrystia Freeland just said, like, no, I'm not going to be shuffled into a backbench position, which is probably what was going to happen. And so she just resigned. She has and I mean, it's not going to be too much longer. The Trudeau administration is toast. Like, the Trudeau administration, we've got some polls coming out that have the Trudeau administration polling at 11%. Like, they've been polling pretty consistently at about 20% to Pierre Poilievre's 40 to 45% for over a year now. And now it's starting to dip down even further. It's not a good sign for the Trudeau Liberals, man. And like Trudeau, and it looks like the Liberals are panicking. They keep doing things that indicate that they're panicking. Like here we're experiencing what they call a GST holiday, where you go out and shop and there's no GST on anything right now, right? And they had everybody kind of change the GST. So if it says $15 on the sign, it's $15. There's no additional tax. And it's like Merry Christmas. And they're all trying to do it that way. I've not met anybody who's been like, oh, wow, look what the Trudeau liberals, oh goodness me, and and the reason for that is it's like, oh yeah, okay, so prices are like 15% cheaper right now, so they're still twice as expensive as they were last year. Merry Christmas. Like I don't think anybody's in like a glory me. Like, people want a big change. They want to see some kind of seismic systemic change. And like, I know what I would do if I was in the Trudeau Liberals position, and I know what I would do if I was in Donald Trump's position. Well, Donald Trump's an oligarch, but if I was in a leadership position and I was actually being confronted by my populace about inflation, I would stand up and I would say, we are doing a price freeze. If you raise prices, we are going to send police to your establishment and we are going to put you in jail. Just like Richard Nixon did. Like, that's going to stop your inflation right there. You look Galen Weston dead in the eye and you said, you raise prices one more time, we're going to put you in jail. That's how you stop inflation. You don't dick around with it. And I think a lot of people would look at that and be like, fuck yeah, here we go. We got some teeth here. And I think that's what people are really looking for right now. Right? People are looking for teeth. Because people are upset. People don't want these namby-pamby, roundabout, soft-handed, silk glove, little pat on the head. And that's kind of what the GST holiday is for most people. Is that it's Trudeau doing us a favor and expecting us to be grateful. That's what it is. That even if you wanted to put it in the best possible light and be like pro-liberal as much as you want, well, what it is it's Trudeau doing us a favor and us expected to be grateful for it. Well, we're not, because what we want is teeth. We want to see Galen Weston frown. We want to see these rich people go, I don't like that, so that we can go, ha ha, fuck you, rich people. Like, we literally watched a rich CEO get gunned down in the streets, and we all went, hooray. We very obviously would love to see these guys get taken down a peg. We want to see their taxes go up. We want to see a leader say to them, stop raising prices or we'll put you in jail. We want to see teeth. We want to see somebody go up there and fight. And it's not Trudeau. And it's not going to be Pierre Poilievre either. Pierre Poilievre's their man. He's not going to do anything. But I think people are so frustrated and so upset that they're willing to sort of roll the roulette wheel and let it ride. And basically be like, let's just get another guy in. I think there's this accelerationist view that has taken hold. We have somebody over on Twitch saying, hello, comrade. Good to see you. I'm going to call you B because you've got a very fun name. Hope you're doing well over there on Twitch, my friend. Yeah, stop the wars, pop the housing bubble, inflation problem solved. You bet. Nilo writes, the ironic thing is that Freeland was brought on because of her strong Washington connections. I guess those were with Democrats. Yeah, likely. Baldy continues, I do find it ironic that a Nazi is resigning the Nazi party because she sees the Nazi party ship sinking. Well, it didn't. They still managed to get their Nazi monument up, right? They got their Victims of Communism monument up. 2/3 of it are literally 2/3 of the names on the Victims of Communism monument are literally Nazi sympathizers or just Nazis. So it's like one of the memes that's going on right now that I'm super happy is going around, and I don't know if you guys have seen it. Is there's a cartoon called, I forget the name of it, but it's like Commando or something like this. In any case, there's a robot character on it called G.I. Robot, and he was programmed in the 40s to help the Allies kill Nazis. And so he's like an artificial intelligence robot, and all he wants to do is kill Nazis. and his whole ethos, like every line that the guy says is like, when are we going to kill Nazis? It's been so long since we've killed Nazis. Oh, how much longer until we kill some Nazis together? I can't think of anything better than to kill Nazis with you. Like, it's how he defines the parameters of his friendships. Hull, how are you doing? Yeah, Creatures Commando, that's right. And and there's even a scene where he like goes into like a modern neo-Nazi rally. He doesn't realize that that's what it is, and they don't realize what he is. And so when he puts it together that these guys are Nazis, he kills all of them. And there's like a lot of catharsis to it. I'm looking at it being like, so here's a group of creators who made this show, Creatures Commando, and they said to themselves, hey, let's just stop dicking around with this. Let's stop like soft tiptoeing around this. Let's give people what they want. And you know what people want? People want a character who's going to shoot some goddamn Nazis. Like, and you know what we should do? We should call them Nazis. We should say, hey, there's Nazis, we should kill them, and then celebrate when they do. Like, and like the most iconic scene is the Creature Commando people start fighting against the villain, and the GI robot goes, are these guys Nazis? And the leader goes, yeah, GI robot, these guys are Nazis. And then like the robot just takes on this like, he can't smile because he's a robot obviously, but he's smiling, and he just opens like fire and starts to like levitate, literally has all of these guns and is just like going crazy, and like there's this big epic music playing. And I loved it. And I think lots of people loved it, because I think that we've been soft handing and glad handing these Nazis for a long time. That there are Nazis in our society, very obviously. They've taken power very clearly. Like the Trudeau administration, who celebrates Nazis, had everybody stand up and clap for them, and they erected a Nazi monument. We've got here in Ontario, they're literally peddling Nazi propaganda in the education systems now. And of course, like the Republican Party, like, have you noticed how the Black Panthers were dismantled, but the Ku Klux Klan still exists? Like, have you noticed this? How left organizations and people who are on the left wing of the political spectrum were hunted down and murdered by the institutions, but the racist organizations that literally lynch people, they've been allowed to just sort of chill out and be cool. Like we know who the leader is, we know where he lives, and he's just freely walking around organizing. Anybody notice this? And so when I see something like Creatures Commando outright being like, oh hey, yeah, kill Nazis. And it's nice. It's nice to see. It's nice to see that there's a small group of people in the society that still believe in civilization. I know, buddy. My little guy is getting up and lying down and up and down and up and down. Good boy, buddy. Good boy. And one of the things, like, it's just nice to be able to say out loud in front of everybody and have it be taken seriously. Like, it's not dismissed out of hand. That, like, yeah, the people who are in positions of power are villains. We should despise them like we despise Prince John, like we despise Macbeth, like we hate all of the great villains of history and time. Right? And Nilo goes, they will come after us for hate speech. Yeah, that's the big thing that's actually happening. I was just talking about that. Like, this story here, like, I said it earlier and I'll say it again. Right? I don't care if you're a far-right libertarian, don't tread on me, hands off my guns, Second Amendment hog with a big giant Chevy Ford Thunder Cougar Alpha Bird bigger than a World War II tank truck, hard hat, fight for yourself, or a loony lefty blue hair, they them, woke feminist, right? Both of those people should join forces and grab each other's hands over this issue. The fact that the state is charging Brianna Boston with a possible 15-year sentence as well as a $100,000 jail bond because she said deny, defend, depose to the people who were denying her service that she pays for. Yeah, that should be an eyebrow raiser. That should have literally everybody across the entire political spectrum look at their government and go, oh, you're completely fucking illegitimate. You have absolutely no authority. Hall asks, so are the Nazis and the Jays on the same side? I don't know who the Jays are in that. And I have concerns about that. Like, do you mean Zionists? Is that what you mean? Nilo writes, I would say we are less protected than Americans for speech, but doesn't seem to be the case anymore. So let's be really, really, really clear. Joe writes, it's so obvious they want to make an example of her and scare the public into submission. Yeah, it should do the exact opposite. It should do the exact opposite. Like, that's how demented and detached and terrified these guys are, that they're making these incredibly bad decisions. Like, if I'm seeing this, my response should not be, oh no, bow the head to capital. It should be arm up. Because your state is turning against you. And it is not much longer now. So, in regards to Hull's comment, let's be really clear here. Here at the Canadian Commie, we create a sharp distinction between people in the Jewish community, Jews, and Zionists. Zionism is the ideology that says we should ethnically cleanse Gaza so that we can have a state of Israel. That's what Zionism is. And there is a sharp distinction between that. And because of that, yes, Nazis and Zionists are allied, which you can see pretty sharply with the support that the Zionists and Benjamin Netanyahu has been enjoying from Germany and the ADF in Germany. The ADF being like essentially Nazism rephrased and just a new, like, take off the one jacket, put on a new jacket and call it a different thing. And anytime anybody says, hey, you guys are Nazis, you just go, what? No, how dare you? New CIA drone pilot, how do you say? Yes, AFD, my bad, thank you. Wick, no camera, so you got the bread instead, that's cool. No, I'm getting the camera, my man, I promise. It's coming. I'm just being kind of a slack ass about it. I'm doing errands tomorrow, and that is one of the errands that I am doing tomorrow. I'm doing very well, new CIA drone pilot. I'm not as sick as I have been. I'm at like 90%. I can still feel it in my chest. I'm still coughing every so often. But my energy is back up. So the energy's back up. So I'm hoping that this time next week I'm going to be back at 100%, back doing stuff. Nilo writes, the Zionists are probably the ones with the most to gain from the spread of anti-Semitism. Yep, drives immigration to Israel. Yeah, for sure. Like, I mean, although Israel is in a total state of frantic disrepair and like, I don't like, it's going to be generations for Israel to recover. And this new thing where they're going into Syria and destroying Syria, I don't think that's going to work out in their favor. I just don't think that it's going to be a thing they're going to be thankful that they did. I don't know that they're going to actually keep that territory. And I don't think that they're actually going to, like, if anything, it's just going to inspire more chaos in the region, and it's going to create more splinter cells and terrorist organizations and terrorist groups. Like, I don't know how anything else happens. Like, and I don't know how the Zionists think they're going to continue and keep it up. Like, I don't know how they think they're actually going to manage to secure this territory and actually manage to keep everybody within it aligned and on their side. Like, to me, the most likely scenario is that a warlord will appear in Syria and basically take Syria over. Initially, said warlord will feign support for the United States and Israel, but eventually will follow his own path and make his own decisions for his own state, right? And how do I know that's what's going to happen? Because that's what always happens. It's literally Saddam Hussein. It's every single time the United States does this, where they invade a country and overthrow it and install a guy. Well, that guy always does the exact same thing, where eventually he just looks at his people and goes, maybe I should actually govern these people, and actually do something to help them. And the moment any leader anywhere says, maybe I should do something to help my own people, that's when the United States turns on them, right? Because that's the great sin. That's the great sin. You can't help your own people. That's forbidden. The only thing you're allowed to do is funnel money into the coffers of the already slavishly rich. And that's all you're allowed to do. And but the difference is I just don't know how they're going to stop anybody that rises up. Because anybody that rises up in Syria is going to rise up from the base of the people themselves. Right? Like Assad didn't really have support from his own people. Like, he was kind of like, that's the reason why they were able to push him out at the end of all of this, is because he had sort of a very weak coalition of support. He wasn't really able to take control of sections of his own country. People were more or less just tolerating him. Like, he wasn't really, he had a core of support, obviously, but this final push to get him out was successful because his support was weak. Because I don't think he wasn't a very popular leader, right? Like, but whoever takes his place will likely be seen more favorably, right? Initially, you'll have like your era of terror. It's what always happens. You have an era of purging and of terror and all of this, and then somebody comes out of it who actually garners the respect of the people and who actually is listened to, and actually people look at him and they think, here's a guy who's going to get this done. And for the people of Syria, like, all the people of Syria want now is stability. That's all they want. They just want things to stabilize. They just want shit to not blow up. Right? Well, right now that's not what's happening. New CIA drone pilot says DEI, Daesh, woke Al-Qaeda will lead Syria to a new era of prosperity. Yeah, right. No. We all know what the goal of America is. Like, this Wall Street Journal opinion article, right? Like, how is this not just Nazism? Like, this is the thing I keep saying, right? Like, it's mask off now. Like, they're not hiding anymore. Like, this guy, this lass, Karen Elliott House, has actually written a headline that says, "The Middle East is up for grabs. The region challenges every president, but opportunities abound for Trump in 2025. You know what, man? I'm going to read this article. The Middle East is up for grabs. Wall Street Journal. Dude, let's go. Let's read this. Let's read this. Yeah. Click. Nobody look. Everybody turn your eyes. Everybody turn your eyes right now. Nobody pay any attention to what's happening on the screen. Nobody pay any attention to what's happening on the screen. You don't need to see any of this. It's not important. Okay. Dude, we're about to read some fucking Nazism. Like, I'm dead ass sure about it. Let's go. The Middle East is up for grabs. The region challenges every president, but opportunities abound for Trump in 2025. By Karen Elliott House. The Middle East never ceases to surprise and disappoint. Yeah, that's true because you don't know anything about it, right? I imagine you would be consistently surprised by a world you know nothing about, right? And when your expectation is, oh, we're going to be able to squeeze as much oil as we possibly can out of this place for free, for nothing. Oh, I just starts. Yep, Joe, I'm already disgusted. Good, Joe. Embrace that. Embrace that. These days, the region looks like a model for much of the world, and current events complicate President-elect Trump's pledge to make America and the world safe again. Hold on. These days, the region looks like a model for much of the world? Like, we're going to have armies invade and destroy them? Is that what we're doing? In 45 years of covering international politics, so this person's been doing this for 45 years. I'm sure this isn't going to be like a hard right, like neo-Nazi take. I've never seen the world more complex or confrontational than it is now. We keep blowing everything up, and it just keeps getting more confrontational. It's like I keep beating my children, and they keep yelling at me. Don't they understand that the beatings will continue until morale improves? I don't understand. For 45 years, I've watched my country destroy everything, and everything's just getting more chaotic and confusing. I don't understand. Thanks, Karen. You're doing great. China is saber-rattling at Taiwan. I love this. Like, this is the classic, like, Nazi take these days, right? China is saber-rattling at Taiwan. Yes, China is saber-rattling at its own province. China is looking to the rest of the world and saying, hey, the territory that is ours is ours. Saber-rattling. North Korea is sending troops to fight in Ukraine. Just straight propaganda take. Straight propaganda take, dude. I love that I love that this story has taken hold. North Korea is sending troops to end aid in Ukraine. Who are they? Where are they? Can I see a picture? Like what's actually going on there? Is like how many men? Where are, like, when? At what in what position? With what equipment? What are they doing? And, like, do you know how many men they would have to actually send to Ukraine to have it make any difference whatsoever? This is so obviously like some dog whistling bullshit where they're just like, yeah, we can say North Korea and people will be like, oh, North Korea, it's so spooky. South Korea is in an impeachment crisis. Yeah, just like the rest of the Western world. Have you noticed how, like, so the South Korean president attempted to basically do a coup. He attempted to declare martial law. I heard a really great take that I'm only somewhat remembering, which is that, he wanted to coup the government because the parliament itself is actually fairly left-wing, and they're not allowing him to increase military expenditure. And so he wanted to declare martial law so that he could ramp up military expenditure to Ukraine. That was the take that I heard, and I was like, oh, yeah, that makes sense. There's a logic to that. European leaders are weak. Yeah, like Germany's government just collapsed. France's government just collapsed. The UK is being governed by a literal Goldman Sachs executive. The US is essentially without a president. Oh man, Karen's hitting some stuff here. Right? She's painting a very bleak picture. It's almost as though the Western world is in decline. Huh. Is that the thesis of this channel? All these crises are exacerbated by the sudden demise of Bashar al-Assad's brutal regime in Syria. The dictator's flight to Russia is good news, but it could become bad news quickly if Syria's new rulers return to their terrorist roots. And of course, in this case, what terrorist roots means is not doing what we want them to do, right? That if they murder their own populace and then give us money or oil, then they're democracy, right? Liberty. But if they don't murder their own citizens and then use their own money to try to help their own citizens, they're an evil dictatorship that needs to be overthrown at any moment, right? Sanction regime, sanctions. The visible weakness of Russia and Iran, ? Okay. Mr. Assad's two protectors provides Mr. Trump with opportunities. Yeah, so literally this is just an argument for opportunism, right? We're going to do away with even the argument of liberal democracy. We're going to do away with liberalism as a philosophy of thought at all. 45 years of observation, no, none of that matters. Opportunism. We need to go in there and take the opportunity as fast as possible. Got it. The president-elect has pledged to end Russia's war in Ukraine within 24 hours of his inauguration. I gotta tell you, if Trump actually manages that, if he is inaugurated and then 24 hours later Zelensky and Putin are declaring even a ceasefire, I will just be like, is Trump the greatest American president? Is Trump the actual... Is this the reality that I live in? Is Donald Trump actually the greatest American president that ever lived in my lifetime? Was that what's happening? He's not going to be able to do that, I think. But, I don't know. Maybe we are in the worst timeline. Who knows? The Assad regime's collapse owes much to Moscow's poor performance in Ukraine. What? What? Dude, look, man, can we just get off this? Can we please just do a basic analysis of the situation that's happening in Ukraine and actually acknowledge that the Russians are getting everything they want? Like, that's the thing that just kind of kicks me in the balls about this whole thing. Like, the West just keeps trying to, like, undercut and keeps trying to pretend as though, like, what Putin's war goals are to take all of Europe. And anything less than taking all of Europe is an abject and total failure in the eyes of the Russian people. Like, it's just like, shut up. Like, all they have ever wanted to do is take the Donbass region and Crimea. That's it. Their stated goals were to take this region and then ensure that Ukraine never joins NATO, and, of course, denazify Ukraine, which that's like a multi-generational project, of course. Like, the one goal that is the least likely to be accomplished is the denazification of Ukraine, right? And it looks like the Putin administration is willing to step down on that and be like, okay, cool, we'll accept the territory and we'll accept a promise that Ukraine will never join NATO. We'll accept that. So can we please, like, start talking for real about it? Joe writes, no, they can't, John. You know that. They have to toe the line that makes it seem like we need to be over there. Yeah, it's desperate for us to be on the other side of the planet fighting a conflict that we have no reason to be there. But Ukraine's not blue. Ukraine's not blue. Every place else is blue. Every other place is blue. This place could be blue. It's not blue. It should be blue. Fucking Jesus Christ. Vladimir Putin was too distracted to help when Sunni insurgents made their lightning conquest of Syria. Or, crazy thought, they don't actually care that much. Right? How's this for a crazy, insano, go-nuts thought? Is that the Russians don't actually give two fucks. They don't actually care. Right? Like, what do they give a shit if Syria gets taken over? Like, if Assad gets taken over, like, what do they care? What do they have invested in it? Like, what's it matter to them? It's not an existential threat to them, right? What resources do they have there? Like, what do they, what? Like, what is there that they should give two shits about? Like, maybe there was a period of time where there were forces in there that were a problem for them, but, like, the Civil War ended. Right? Like, ISIS was defeated. Like, what's Russia give two shits about? And now all of a sudden it's like, oh, they were too distracted. Yeah, they just didn't give a fuck. Why would they? Like, I can't think of a single reason why Russia should give two shits what happens to Syria. Among the questions confronting Mr. Trump, does Russia's weakness, big question mark, make Mr. Putin more eager to find a settlement in Ukraine? Putin has been calling for a settlement in Ukraine since before it happened. The man has done nothing but stand up and be like, can we settle Ukraine? Can we settle Ukraine? Hey, let's sit down and have the Minsk Accords. Let's talk about this Ukrainian situation. Hey, can we have a conversation about Ukraine? Hey, America, can we maybe come to a deal about what we're going to do about Ukraine? And then finally he like moves his men in and is just like, and then looks over at the West and is like, can we talk about this? Are we ever actually going to have a serious conversation like adults where you actually acknowledge our concerns and then we feel our concerns have been listened to and taken seriously? Is that ever going to happen? I don't know how he could be more eager, right? Like if Biden had called Putin at any point, literally any point, just been like boop 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 boop. Oh, hey there, Vlad. It's Joe. This whole Ukraine thing, we got to find a way to do this. Man, come on, Jack. We got to find a way to make this thing that's real, because if we don't, we got to. I think Putin would be over there being like, yeah, yeah. Drop the documents. Let's go. Let's talk about that for real. Like, this framing of Putin as if he's like staunchly opposed to diplomacy. It's like, fuck you guys. Like, fuck you Nazis, man. Like, I hate that there's so much Nazism in the United States. I hate that there's these just losers that need to pretend as though the American empire is not obviously an egregious Nazi force in the world. Like, it just kills me that these people still think that they can pretend like this. And we're all supposed to just be like, yeah, Putin, he wants to take over Europe. Like, shut up. Like, shut up. It's just so dumb. Okay. Or will he demand Ukrainian territorial concessions to prove his war wasn't a wasteful folly? That's literally, like, that's literally the only thing that Putin has said. That he's like, look, if we're going to engage meaningfully in diplomacy, it's going to begin by you saying this territory is ours. Which, incidentally, like, to prove this war wasn't a wasteful folly, that's literally the war objective. That's literally the war objective. That's literally the war objective. Yeah, he demanded those concessions and we gave them, but the only reason he demanded them was to prove the war wasn't a wasteful folly, because those were his war objectives. Jesus Christ. Man, I wish that for 45 years I could write this garbage. Can you imagine? 45 years she's been writing this. That this total loser, Karen House, has just been writing this absolute dreck, being taken seriously by people in the Wall Street Journal, where she gets to just say this ridiculous bullshit nonsense, where and people actually look at it and be like, yeah, it's a wasteful folly. You know what the wasteful folly is? Coupping the Ukrainian government in 2014. Like, there's a wasteful folly. Hey, you know what a wasteful folly looks like? There are weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, and we're going to go in there and launch a crusade. Fool me once, shame on me. Fool me twice, I ain't going to get fooled again. If Mr. Trump grants large chunks of Ukraine to Russia, what will American allies conclude about U.S. reliability? Like, hey, maybe you shouldn't have poked the bear. Like, maybe you shouldn't have poked the fucking bear. You ever think about that? What will China conclude about Mr. Trump's willingness to protect Taiwan? Taiwan is part of China. Trump does not have any there's no international position in which Trump is in the position to protect Taiwan. Protect Taiwan? What are you talking about? Taiwan is part of China. It's been that way since the Nixon administration. It's internationally recognized. There isn't a single international body that sees Taiwan as anything other than a province of China. Mr. Trump's willingness to protect Taiwan, these people are Nazis. Like, can we just call it for what it is? Perhaps Mr. Trump can satisfy Mr. Putin's ego another way. Oh, here we go. Here we go. So instead of actually engaging in serious diplomacy like an adult, we're going to hear what Karen wants to do. Okay, let's go. He could promise Russia to persuade Turkey, now a power in Syria, to let Russia keep its important Mediterranean military port at Tartus. Listen to how crazy this sounds. This is how insane these people are. Oh my God, I did not realize that we were going to go down just this insano. Like these people are okay. Okay. So instead of saying, okay, the territory that you said you were going to take because of our antagonism to you and the existential threat that we created in the region, you can have it. So instead of that, we're gonna promise Russia, because our word is bond, right? When we promise things, it's for sure a guarantee, absolutely, right? We could promise Russia to persuade Turkey. So we're promising Russia that we're not going to actually have already done it. We're just going to promise that we're going to do it, right? I've got concepts of a plan. That's what this sounds like. This sounds like Karen coming up with a concept of a plan. And her plan is to promise Russia to persuade Turkey to let Russia keep its important Mediterranean military ports at Tartus, but Turkey's not throwing Russia out of Tartus. Like it's a manufactured conflict. Turkey's not going to throw Russia out of Tartus. What are you talking about? Turkey's not antagonistic to Russia at all. This is a manufactured conflict that you've created of thin air so that you can say we'll persuade you to resolve the conflict that I just manufactured instead of just giving you the land you currently have. This is why the thing is coming apart. These are the people. She's been doing this for 45 years. This is the Wall Street Journal. Oh my God, why did I read this? Why did I read this? Why did I read this? I love the idea that anybody read this and was like, yeah, they could do that. That's a serious thing that they could do. Okay. John H., good to see you. Or perhaps Mr. Trump, who insists Syria is not our fight, will remove 900 U.S. troops from the country's northeast, increasing the likelihood that turmoil will spread in Syria and perhaps to Iraq. What? You think turmoil is going to increase in the region, Karen? That's the first thing that you've said that makes any fucking sense. Turmoil will for sure spread in the region. For sure. It's a guarantee. That's written in the stars. Iran is the biggest loser in Mr. Assad's fall. I'm so looking forward to this. Please, let's watch these mental gymnastics. Angry mobs ransacked Iran's embassy in Damascus, obliging Tehran to withdraw its troops. Israel's 2 retaliatory attacks against Iran this year destroyed key military sites and sharply degraded the Islamic Republic's air defenses. This is just some goddamn bluster right here, right? What happened in Syria was the result of a joint American Zionist plot, Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei said on December 11th. Yeah, that's what it was. Like, it was Benjamin Netanyahu and the Americans. Like, the major concern that has actually been going on in Israel's north region is that, okay, let's just bring up the map for 2 seconds. Google Maps. So Israel's northern region, right there's Lebanon, right there's Syria. This northern region has, for a long time now, been saying, hey, we've been abandoned. Like, we've been totally messed up. Like, we're going to declare our own independence because we're not being protected at all. And so what are they doing? They're launching military attacks into Lebanon, and now they've launched a military attack into Damascus, right? In order to try to secure this territory to be able to shore up their own border. And of course, there's the Greater Israel Project, right? All of that kind of stuff, spreading it into the region. And so, yeah, of course it's an American Zionist plot. This whole thing is an American Zionist plot. Like, this whole operation is an American Zionist plot. Like, the entire thing. In a Mideast full of surprises. My fucking God, I cannot even fucking believe she's gonna say this. I cannot even believe you're even writing this, dude. Jesus Christ. You know, man, like, I really try, you guys. Like, I'm really trying, right? I do this every single week, right? I comment on the decline of the West, and every so often I'm just encountering these articles that makes me realize, like, dude, if when I was 20 years old I had just sold out to the empire, I could be making like $100,000 a year writing an article like this every week or month, just shitting this stuff out. For 45 years she's been doing this. It's just so, like, why do I have to have principles? Why do I have to have morality? Like, why? Why, creator of the universe, did you burden me with the desire to do good? I could have been evil. Okay. In a Mideast full of surprises, we can't rule out the collapse of Iran's regime if Mr. Trump resumes his maximum pressure sanctions, because that's been working. Like, if you keep putting pressure on Iran, they're just going to build a nuke, and they're just going to continue pivoting to China and Russia, which is what they've been doing the whole fucking time. Iran already suffers from high inflation, yeah, because we're not experiencing high inflation. A weak economy, because we're not experiencing a weak economy. And a disgruntled population, yeah, because we're not experiencing a disgruntled population. Like, the people of Iran understand what happens if their country collapses. Like, they know what's going to happen. They know that the West is going to come in and they're going to turn the country into Afghanistan or Iraq. You know, the countries that border them. Like, you're like, a woman like this is literally talking about Iran as if it's like just a dumb baby sitting there being like, oh, I don't get suckers. I'm gonna throw the government out now. Oh, and there's no consequences to that. Iran is offering to discuss its nuclear program with the United States, though it isn't likely that Mr. Trump will accept that offer after pulling out of the joint nuclear agreement his first term. Look, dude, if I'm Iran at this point, I'm building that nuke. Right? I'm building the hell out of that nuke. Ojatres, good to see you. Good to see you. The immediate risk is that Iran, feeling exposed, will try to sprint to a bomb before Mr. Trump takes office. Yeah, they should. They should. It's the only thing the Americans actually respond to. They don't give a shit about countries that don't have nuclear capability. Like, take a look at Libya. They'll just go in there and blow the shit out of you, right? Like, I feel like it's only a matter of time. Like, if I'm in Iran, I'm sitting there being like, yeah, the Americans are going to come in here and fuck us up at any moment. Like, where's our nuke? Like, I would be definitely pushing for that. Because these people are crazy. Like, listen, like, just read this article and you'll be like, yeah, we should build a nuke. For sure. President Biden almost certainly wouldn't help Israel strike Iranian nuclear sites. 2 days after the 2024 election, Mr. Biden renewed a sanctions waiver giving Iran access to $10 billion in frozen assets. But, like, Biden does all kinds of things to ramp up war. Like, he's sending, like, literally long-range missile systems to Ukraine. Like, I just... Yeah, Biden's a dove, though. He's definitely not just one of the most hawkish overseeing, like, ghouls that have existed in American politics. That's definitely not the case. If Israel didn't exist, we'd have to invent it. That's not a Biden quote. Iran's weakness, is good news for Saudi Arabia. A lack of trust in U.S. protection led Riyadh to establish relations with Tehran in 2023. Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman is determined to play a major role in world affairs and free the kingdom's economy from its reliance on oil. His ambitions have led him to deepen relations with Russia, China, and India. Yeah, just like Iran. Like, Iran's weakness is good news for Saudi Arabia. Iran and Saudi Arabia very recently, with the help of China, sat down and, like, signed a cooperation agreement. They, like, looked at one another and were like, hey, buds? And they were like, yeah, cool, let's be buds. That literally happened within, like, 6 months of this time. Which you're just, like, gonna just glaze right over that, eh? You're just gonna glaze over the whole thing that, like, Saudi Arabia and Iran, traditional antagonists, have actually now kind of grabbed each other's hands and been like, hey, let's put aside our differences and actually fight the U.S. imperial machine with the help of Russia and China, right? No, we're not going to pay attention to that. Iran is weak! Iran is weak and isolated, and we can destroy them with sanctions. Sure, bud. Sure. Okay. Still, MBS is Mr. Trump's favorite Arab leader, and he holds the key to rebuilding efforts in Gaza. The U.S. should work closely with him to build a stable government in Syria. Mohammed bin Salman is not going to help you in Gaza, dude. Like, what... This statement really reveals the detachment and, like, the cluelessness. Like, this is the kind of thing that you can only say if you don't have concepts like solidarity. If the only worldview you actually have in your mindset is economic, right? That everybody is just pursuing their own economic interests and there's no other thing. There's nothing else, right? So the capitalist ideology, the capitalist religion, right? Muslims actually do have something called solidarity. They actually believe in solidarity. Jack over on Twitch, good to see you, my man. Hope you're doing well. Like, the Houthis are fighting, and are still fighting, by the way, out of solidarity. That what they see in Gaza is Zionists committing a genocide against Muslims. And so, because they are also Muslims, they, in solidarity, rise up against the Zionists. And that in the Muslim world, there is this sense of solidarity. And that Mohammed bin Salman himself might actually be interested in moving forward in that. But you know who's not? Most of his people. Most of his people. That Israel has effectively isolated itself in the region because no Muslim country wants to do business with them anymore. It's going to, and it is, pillaring their economy. Nobody wants to do business. But Mohammed bin Salman cannot work with Benjamin Netanyahu. Simply 0%. It's a non-starter. His own people will not tolerate it. And yet Karen here is talking about this as if we're just going to move forward. Everything's completely fine. What are you fucking talking about? Dude, I could have been evil. I could have just written articles like this. It would have been so great. I could have just said all kinds of stuff. I'd be really good at it too, right? Like, I think I would have been really good at spreading this kind of bullshit around. Oh, it'd be so great. And then Jesus Christ will come back on a fiery chariot and spread the gospel of the Lord through the Muslim world. I would have been so good at it. The U.S. should work closely with him to build a stable government in Syria. Yeah, he's not going to want to have anything to do with fucking Syria. Right? Like, nobody's going to want to get their hands into Syria at all. What a quagmire. Why would Mohammed bin Salman want to touch Syria? What's in it for him? What does he gain by getting involved in that at all? He doesn't want to get involved with the Benjamin Netanyahu government. He's not interested in these Zionists. Mr. Trump has promised to end the war in Gaza. Yeah, that's going to happen. Bring home American hostages. And broker diplomatic relations between Saudi Arabia and Israel. Like, literally, because of this genocide, Saudi Arabia has straight up turned to Iran and China and Russia and been like, can we be your bros? And they've been like, yeah, for sure. And Saudi Arabia's like, cool. And like, Trump's going to go over there and he's going to be like, hey, we should do some deals. We should try to, hey, you should work with Benjamin. You should work with these guys, right? And the Saudi princes are just going to be like, nah. Like, nah, brah. Like, nah, you see what's going on there, right? Like, you see it with your eyes. Like, they TikTok it, right? You see the live streams of the soldiers celebrating the genocide that they're committing and being like, yeah, we're eradicating all of them. I love shooting babies. Like, you see that, right? Like, you see it with your eyes. And, like, she's just talking as if the ICC thing didn't happen. Just didn't happen. Ooh. She probably doesn't know about it. That's what it is. Saudi Arabia and Israel. While MBS seeks relations with Israel to transform Northern Arabia into a new Silicon Valley, he is unlikely to recognize Israel unless it accepts at least the idea of a Palestinian state. Oh, so she does know. So he's unlikely to recognize Israel until it accepts the very thing it will never accept. Israel will never accept the idea of a Palestinian state. The Zionists are not capable of it. It's against their whole ethos. It's like asking a Nazi to acknowledge the humanity of a Jew. He's just not going to do it. Right? Young Saudis, once ambivalent, now overwhelmingly oppose relations with Israel after watching the devastation in Gaza on social media. I hate you, Karen. I hate you. You keep saying this is what we should do and then telling us why it can't happen. But you keep presenting it as if it can. How about you enter reality and like you put it in your own fucking articles? Oh, I hate you, Karen. I mainly hate you because you've had a very successful career writing this garbage. Like, fuck you. Like, I hate this society. I hate that people like this are in the Wall Street Journal. And that, like, people who are actually, like, good commenters and are like, maybe reality exists and we should acknowledge that, are just, like, relegated to YouTube channels. Representative Mike Waltz, Mr. Trump's pick for National Security Advisor, says, our core interests are ISIS, Israel, and Arab Gulf allies. He might as well just be like, our core interests are fire, water, and keeping that water from boiling. Like, yeah, what we're going to do is we're going to take this ice and we're going to put it into a fire and we just expect the ice to remain solid. If so, the U.S. should leave troops in the region to contain ISIS and find ways to work with Saudi Arabia and other Gulf Arabs. Yeah, thanks, Karen. Yeah, the United States should find a way to work with these guys. Thanks, Karen. Thanks for your input in the Wall Street Journal. There is hope that Mr. Trump can further isolate Iran. How? Iran is buddied up with China, Russia, like India, Saudi Arabia. Like literally there's a rail, right? There's a rail system going through Tajikistan, Turkmenistan, right, into Tehran from China, right? Chunka, 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 woo, woo, right? Like they've attached a high-speed rail system. It's not even woo woo anymore. It's straight up just like wow. Like that's what's going on. Straight up high-speed magnetic rail going like 600,000 kilometers a second. That's inaccurate. But just like high-speed rail going from the Xinjiang province just like straight boom, to Tehran. And you're sitting there being like, we gotta isolate these guys. Too late, Karen. Too late. Too late. Genie's out of the bottle. Right? I'm just imagining this Karen being just like, oh, dearie me, what we need to do in the world today is find a way to work with the Arabs that we've been genociding and bombing for decades. And we have to continue isolating Iran. And I suggest that we do that by cutting off the internet with a glass cutter, because it's a series of tubes. After all, like, why is this being published? Why am I reading it? What is this? Why did an editor read this and be like, this is worthy of the Wall Street Journal? For sure. There is hope that Mr. Trump can further isolate Iran, protecting Americans, Israeli, and Saudi allies. Look how hard she's trying to, like here's the Zionists and here's Saudi Arabia, now kiss. Look at them kiss. That he can exploit Mr. Putin's weakness. What weakness? Like, what is this weakness you're even talking about? To secure an honorable peace for Ukraine. Imagine pretending as though Americans care about honor at all. Imagine believing for even a second that any American anywhere is being like, the peace needs to be honorable. Like, what are you talking about? Nobody is more slimy and more backstabby than Americans. That the entire American industry, military industry, is based on terrorism. It's the one advantage the Americans have going into the multipolar era. The only advantage that America has going into the multipolar era is that they have advanced terrorism techniques. That's what they're best at. That if I was to frame world politics as a video game right now and give everybody like pluses and minuses at what they're good at, you know, attributes and stuff like it's a video game, the attribute that I would give the Americans is high levels of success in their terrorism plots. Because that's what they do. And that's where they put their resources. America's military apparatus and America's goal is to commit as much terrorism in the world as possible. That's its edge. That's what it has going into the multipolar era, if you like it. And this lady is like, honorable peace. Shut up. Go back to the Cold War. Stop writing. And that these achievements... Oh my God, I saw the word Taiwan. Okay, let's take it from the top. There is hope that Mr. Trump can further isolate Iran, not going to happen, protecting Americans, Israeli, and Saudi allies. Saudi Arabia's already jumped ship. That's already happened. That he can exploit Mr. Putin's weakness that doesn't exist to secure an honorable peace that nobody in America gives a shit for Ukraine, and that these achievements, that are all fraudulent and bullshit, will allow Washington to focus on China's threat to Taiwan that it already owns. The risk is that this web of conflict will grow, because of America, obviously, inadvertently triggering wider conflicts for which the U.S. is ill-prepared. Then why do they keep doing it? If the United States is ill-prepared for the conflicts that it is inadvertently going to trigger, then why does it keep triggering conflicts? Karen? What's up, Karen? What are you doing? Huh? Why are you not writing an article that says, hey, to remind everybody, the title of the article that Karen just wrote for us is called "The Middle East is Up for Grabs." Why didn't you title this, "Maybe America Should Stop Fucking Around"? Karen Elliott House. It's just so much fucking Nazism. There's just, it's just become like part of the ethos, right? That like, we can just go in there with our dick swaggering out and just be like, hey, Saudi Arabia, you're gonna be buddies with Israel, and Putin's a weakling even though he's winning. Like, it's just so much dumbass, like, Johnny Bravo bravado. It's just straight up like, hey, baby, why do you come back to my place? Swoop. And, like, except now Johnny's, like, 55 years old, 50 pounds overweight, has a pot belly, and is balding. Like, and so he just looks like a clown. He's got no humility whatsoever. And everybody's just like, yeah, I'm going to go talk to that guy over there. Miss House, a former publisher of the Journal, is author of On Saudi Arabia, Its People, Past, Religion, Fault Lines, and Future. Dude. Okay, with that, I'm going to go use the washroom. Please enjoy this 45-second, absolutely beautiful video created by a couple of fellas. I don't know who these guys are, so I can't, like, tell you. But this is actually really beautiful, and I'm happy that I'm going to share it to you. Please enjoy.
Hey, bro.
Hey, bro.
Why should I keep studying? No matter how hard I try, I can't succeed.
Good grades are necessary to show that you have a determined work ethic.
What good is that?
All kids should grow up to become productive members of society and increase shareholder value.
Shareholder value?
That's right. No joy is greater than feeding the corporate machine. I want to grow up and join the workforce so that the surplus value created by my labor can be enjoyed by wealthy capitalists.
Won't the endless toil reduce my soul to dust?
You'll be ground finer than dust. You'll own nothing and be glad for it.
I understand now. The stress of ownership is a burden. I pray to be an insignificant speck in the capitalist grinder.
Let's get out of here, bro. We've got job applications to fill out.
The consciousness of America is rising. That's one of the things that I really think, like, a video like this really shows me. I'm not alone in this, that there's lots of people that are seeing through this nonsense, that the ridiculous, like, the absolute ridiculous situation that we're all looking at, and the ridiculous scenario that we're all looking at, like, here's a conversation that I'm actually having, and it's actually serious. So the place where I work, my day job, there's a skating rink that we have that we put on over the winter. And as climate change is moving, right, and as climate change is happening, the skating rink is getting less and less able to actually exist. It's an outdoor skating rink that they set up. And in years past, it already would be up by now, right? We're into mid to late December now, right? Well, can't do it. I literally had people show up with skates recently. They had skates. And they were like, hey, we're here for the skating. And it's like, yeah, no skating rink, dude. And straight up, they're just like, oh, no skating rink? And I just look at them dead ass now. And I'm just like, yeah, dude, climate change. And you know what the response that I'm getting from people? Because I'm having this conversation several times now. They're not going like, what? They're going like, oh, yeah, okay. Like, there's going to be a moment where they're going to set up the shack and they're going to have the skate rental all set up. They're going to do it. They're going to have people out there in order to create the rink and all of this, and they're literally not going to be able to do it. And everybody knows it. It's only a matter of time as we continue to ignore this major colossal problem that's directly in front of us. In good news, though, guys, right, from popular mechanics, if humans die out, octopuses already have the chops to build the next civilization, scientists claim. And I gotta tell you, I think they're right. Near as I can tell, these guys have got it figured out, right? To the octopi, because I assume that my live stream is the only thing that's going to survive to the next generation or to the next civilization. To these guys, please, for the love of God, stay underwater. Just stay underwater. It's better there. Don't come up here. So there's nothing going on up here that you need. Right? Chill out under the water. And I mean that. Like, literally just chill out. If one of you octopus fellas starts to make money, kill that one. And then just keep on going. Oh, yeah. They're going to look back and see how much of a loser us Homo sapiens were. Well, like, how easy we are to get entranced by nonsense. That to me is really what it comes down to. Like, we just get really entranced so easily by total nonsense. And, like, we're so easy to distract, and we're so easy to derail, and we're so easy to just convince that bullshit is real. Like, it's just so simple for us to do. Jib Jabby, good to see you, my man. Like, hopefully the octopuses, like, just like look at our religion, like look at how we talk about the nature of our reality and all of this kind of stuff. I just feel like an underwater creature would look at like the Christian theology and just be like, what? what are you fucking, what? You need to chill out under the ocean for a little while, my man. I kind of want to read this one, dude. So once again, everybody do me the favor, right? Nobody look. This isn't happening. Everything's fine. There's nothing wrong happening here. We're not doing anything. Dude. Oh no. Is there no article? There's no article. Gasp. They lied to me. Popular mechanics. Leave it to the science nerds to have this one already figured out. Fucking science nerds. Hold on. One more click. Alright. That's fine. I don't care. It's fine. I don't even care. I didn't want to read it. It's fine. Like, look at this. Just look at this nonsense. Entire nation gripped by heat wave. Look what Australia's dealing with right now, dude. Like, I don't, like, this is going to be rough when I say this, but like, the only reason we get hit with any news whatsoever about what's happening in Australia, and we don't actually talk about the heat waves that go throughout like the Middle East, India, Africa, Latin America, right, is because Australia is white. Right? We all know that's true. It will be the Octopus Dolphin Wars 100,000 years from now. That's right. The octopus will win that war. That is not a close fight. That is actually not even remotely close. Like, if I'm a dolphin, I'm not engaging in that. For sure. Like, oh yeah, get the fuck away from the octopi, dude. I just think this is funny. Magic the Gathering card. Rather than vote, you may have the target creature you control fight target creature you don't control. Gruel politics. Yeah, we could go for some gruel politics right now. Oh, yes. It's always the same map, right? We all know what this is, right? Here's the color, and here's the other color. It's always the same map. This one indicates favorability towards China, right? The deeper the red, the more positive it is, right? Because better red than dead, right? Red means communist. And the more blue it is, right, the more negative it is. I don't know why they chose it to do that way. Usually it's the opposite, but I do think it is straight up just like red communism, right? Yeah, Mongolian's way more blue than I thought it would be, but I gotta tell you, it tracks, right? Like, it's not like China and Mongolia have a big, long history of being friends. Like, to me, the only reason why Mongolia even really exists as it exists now is because China and Russia both agree that they want it as a buffer state. They're both just like, nope, Mongolia is its own thing. Nope. Nope, not part of China. And Russia's like, yeah, not part of Russia. And so that kind of leaves Mongolia as being sort of isolated, right? To me, the big takeaway, because, like, I mean, let's be straight, like, Canada, America, Australia, Japan, most of Europe, right? No big surprises, right? Blue as blue can get. The shocker to me is actually India. That if you actually read the full report, it's only negative by like 10 points, right? When you consider that, like, going full blue is like negative 40 points, right? India is only negative by about 10. So there's more of a, like, middle ground there, which I think is pretty surprising, considering the long history that exists between China and India, and the tensions that have existed between the two of them for a long time now. And so, to me, that kind of indicates sort of a softness. Like, you take a look at Japan, and Japan's like hard blue, right? But India is not. India is a little bit more... Iran more blue than Saudi Arabia. Oh, yeah, that's true. Check that out. Saudi Arabia is actually as favorable of China as China is favorable of China. The Saudis like China as much as China likes China. How about that? And yeah, you're right. Iran is actually, like, not that happy. I wonder why. Dude, I wonder why. Like, I have this whole thing. I could, like, crack into it if I wanted to. And then, of course, you look at the European countries, and, like, Spain kind of pokes out there as being a little bit soft, right? Some of the Eastern countries, right? Of course, Germany and France are hard blue. Who's shocked? And the Scandinavian countries, except little Mr. Norway right there, right? Little Wang Doodle. Anyway, but it's always the same map, right? Like, here's your World War III line, right? Like, your World War III line is just so clearly drawn up. Oh, XD writes, I read on the subreddit where this came from that their methodology is very flawed, especially regarding Iran. I don't know if I want to crack it open and really go too deep into it. I do have it on the Discord, but I just wanted to show it because it's like, you know, always the same map. And in the middle of all of this craziness that's going on, right, with Luigi, with the arrest of Brianna, whatever, I should really know her name. I shouldn't just say whoever. Yeah, Brianna Boston. What a great name, by the way. Brianna Boston. That's a real, like, fighting name. Like, no wonder she got in trouble with the state. She got denied health care that she pays for, and she mouthed off. Brianna Boston, getting herself into trouble, as always. What a baller. So in the midst of all this craziness and alien drones and all this kind of crazy bullshit, OpenAI whistleblower found dead in San Francisco apartment. Sushir Balaji, 26, claimed the company broke copyright law. Oh, so we've got a whistleblower who suddenly suicided. San Francisco, a former OpenAI researcher known for whistleblowing, the blockbuster artificial intelligence company facing a swell of lawsuits over its business model, has died. Authorities confirmed this week. Sushir Balaji, 26, was found dead inside his Buchanan Street apartment on November 26. San Francisco police and the office of the chief medical examiner said. Police have been called to the Lower Haight residence at about 1 p.m. that day after receiving a call asking officers to check on his well-being, a police officer said. The medical examiner determined the manner of death to be suicide. Yeah, 6 bullets to the back of the head. And police officials this week said there is currently no evidence of foul play. So how did he commit suicide? Well, how did he do it? What would it look like? Information he held was expected to play a key part in lawsuits against the San Francisco-based company. Yeah, we've heard this story before, right? Like, remember when that the airline? Why am I blanking on that name? The airline had a whistleblower that committed suicide by shooting himself in the back of the head 6 times, right? Boeing. Yeah, thank you, XD. Balaji's death comes with 3 months after he publicly accused OpenAI of violating U.S. copyright law while developing ChatGPT, a generative artificial intelligence program that has become a money-making sensation used by hundreds of millions of people across the world. So this is a bit of a sidebar, but I have completely found ChatGPT to be really useful when it comes to analyzing Shakespeare. I memorized the very famous Macbeth tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow monologue. And while I was doing it, there were like some phrases that I was like, I don't quite understand what you're saying. And so I just plugged them into ChatGPT and was like, analyze this. And it did. And I was like, oh, that's actually very helpful. Like, really clarified some things. Like, Macbeth at one point says, were they not forced by those who should be ours? We might have met them dareful beard to beard, right? And I was like, I don't understand what he's saying. Like, were they not forced? So they're being forced to do something, but it's against Macbeth's interests, so I don't understand. And then I plugged it into ChatGPT, and it was like, oh, no, it doesn't mean forced as in forcing somebody to do something. It means forced as in to reinforce. So he's saying, were they not reinforced by those who would be ours, by people who left us, by people who fled, right? Because Macbeth's fucking lost his mind. And I was like, oh, thanks, ChatGPT. That was very helpful. And it happened like lickety-split. It was like super quick. So there's my very nerdy theater reason for why I actually kind of like ChatGPT, and it was very useful to me. So thanks, ChatGPT. Nilo writes, I think Iran might be a bit of a victim of its own success, being a more liberal and enlightened Muslim country. I don't know, dude. I think that Iran is just happy it's still stable. That's all. Like, I think that it's the... I mean, I think I see what you're saying, like it's a victim of its own success, because Iran is actually one of the very few countries. I think there's literally 2 countries that were never colonized. That during the colonial period, Iran just never got colonized. And the only Western moment that they experienced was the Shah, right, throughout the 50s. And that was a very brief period of time. It didn't last that long. And it's literally the only war that Iran engaged in 200 years. So Iran has, and because Iran has never been colonized properly, like it didn't experience the colonial period, it does kind of still have its own history and its own stability and its own roots. And I think that they are defending themselves from colonial powers, right? So I get what you're saying, AC, where you say they were semi-colonized. Yeah, like, I mean, they definitely got a piece of it, but it didn't go that deep. It wasn't so successfully achieved. And I think that the West has never forgiven them for it. Like, they should be a colony. Just like the rest of the Middle East should be a colony. Like Iraq, right? Joe writes, I don't know, the government is still a theocracy. Nilo responds, yes, I know, but the new president means something too. He said a new hijab law cannot be enforced, for example. Yeah, I mean, before the Shah took power, Iran was a fairly liberal society. It was a secular liberal society before the Shah. Like, you can see pictures. They're not that difficult to find. And, like, people are wearing, like, mini skirts and, like, just regular Western kind of clothing and garb. It's not like everybody was walking around wearing hijabs, right? And that you have the period of the Shah, and then you have the overthrow of the Shah. And now, for the most part, I do think that Iran is just in a position where it's just trying to defend itself. It's just and I keep saying it, I'll say it over and over again, right? During periods of duress, like during periods of existential threat, and Iran has 100% for the last 30 years been experiencing major existential threat, the people who take power and the people who you want to take power, like I'm living in a country, all of the countries around me are being blown up by an external threat that's very powerful. The people I want to be in power are those who are most willing to shoot, most willing to organize militantly, and those who are willing to stand up for what we consider our values. Far-right theocrats, right? Like, that's who's going to take power. And, like, you can stand here and you can be like, no, we should have a strong progressive agenda or whatever and all that kind of stuff. But, like, unless you already have that fairly well established, unless you already have those organizations already in place, it's going to be far-right theocrats that take power, especially in a place like Iran. Like, and so the only way that's going to change in Iran, and it will eventually change, is if we stop fucking around. Like, if we just stop blowing the place up. Like, I can't imagine why, like, if I'm living in Iran, and I think this is true of most of the world in that region, right? Most of the world, like, I'm talking about, like, all of Africa, all of the Middle East, right? India, even Latin America, right? Like, you gotta be looking at China right now. You gotta be. And you just gotta be sitting there being like, how in the hell did you guys pull that off? How in the hell did you do this? That's insane what you've done. It's absolutely bonkers what China has done. And it is absolutely bonkers what China has done. In the space of 50 years, in a single generation, they have gone from straight up just being like in the sticks from like 1949, the formation of the People's Republic of China, to now, so it's 50, 70 years, right? So within a single lifetime, they've gone from being like literally all our houses are made of sticks to straight up being a hyper modern, leading, cutting edge, spacefaring industrial people. Meanwhile, India, right, has completely stagnated. And it's just living in the same kind of mire that it had back when the British were there. And there hasn't been the same kind of robust industrialization. There hasn't been the same kind of leap forward that the Chinese have 100% experienced. And so, at this stage in the game, if you're India, Vietnam, Thailand, Iran, Afghanistan, like Chad, Ethiopia, anything, any place, and you're looking over at China, the only thing that you have got to be thinking is, how the hell did you do it? Tell us. How did we do it? How do you do that? We want that. How? And China is looking back over at them and saying, yeah, we can show you. Can we have access to your cobalt? We'll show you how to do it. You got a mine there, right? Can we have access to that? We'll show you how to do it. And like, that shit's gonna spread. that shit's going to spread. And that's what has the Western world terrified, right? That's why it's always the same map, right? That's why it's always this way. Because the power structure, Western capitalism, requires the subjugation and the exploitation of the colonized world, the global south, as they would call them. That it requires people to live in poverty. It requires people to be in a position where they don't have anywhere else to turn, and they can't go anywhere, and they can't talk to anybody else. Where the only institutions that they are allowed to deal with are us. So that we have a monopoly on their subjugation and their exploitation. And that they can only trade in dollars. And they're not allowed to do anything else. And that's ending. It's ending. And it's ending because of the short-sightedness of the West. That they genuinely thought that China would never be able to ascend to rival them. They genuinely thought that it would never be the case. And now, yeah, exactly, Nilo. Africa, let's go. Abso-fucking-lutely. Africa, let's go. Absolutely. I think that moving into the next century, Africa is absolutely, like, Africa is a huge continent with an enormous amount of resources, an enormous amount of potential. And it's just been carrying this colonial power structure on its back for 500 years. And it's just now beginning to go, we don't need to arrange ourselves this way. We don't need to be paying attention to these Westerners. We don't need to be dealing with them. Look at China. And that China has led by example and has shown the entire rest of the world, look at what we can do. Look at what we can do. Look at what we can achieve. And look at what we can achieve. It's absolutely wild that there's this enormous economic powerhouse on the ascension in the world that is exponentially growing at accelerated speed, while the previous colonial power structure is collapsing downward and with no end in sight. That the leadership that exists throughout the West is just a bunch of vultures who are just picking as much meat off the carcass as they can. And that every single one of them is in it for themselves and views their own populaces as a threat to their own power and success. Like, it's just absolutely wild. Long Defiant writes, almost like nationalism is a fool's ideology. Long Defiant says, if 5 countries went communist at the same time, how many would the West invade? I feel like the Chinese are being so delicate about this. Like, it would be so fascinating to listen to the internal conversations within the Chinese Communist Party. Because, like, when it comes to international politics, they are, the statement that I keep hearing them say is that they're not taking a fundamentalist's position, right? Like they're not reigniting the old fights that the Western Marxists are still arguing and bickering about. They're literally saying, we are socialism with Chinese characteristics, and every country is going to come to socialism and communism through its own methods. And we accept that, and we're not going to get in the way of that. We're not even going to criticize it. And they're not. Like, the Communist Party of China has not published a criticism of any other country that is pursuing a Marxist or a communist line since like dang. And it's just straight up like, but here's the thing. America's hard power is actually in a pretty significant decline. Like, take a look at Ukraine. Like, take a look at how badly the West actually fared in Ukraine. That Russia is winning that fight. It's winning that fight. And America can't do anything about it. Take a look at the Houthis. America can't defeat the Houthis. I think what's going on is that all of America's military expenditure is on paper, and it's all bloat. And that they produce missiles and bullets and weaponry, but they don't have anybody to actually shoot, and they don't have anybody to actually use this equipment. That military enlistment is down. That nobody is joining the military for obvious reasons. They're Nazis. And that the empire is beginning to decay because the only way it has managed to sustain itself is through this hard-nosed militarism, and they can't find people to do it anymore. And the people who are joining the military are expecting to be doing bureaucratic jobs, logistical jobs. But you can't get 1 million people to take a front anymore. You can't do that. You can't get 1 million kids to drop them in the middle of a country. You can't do that. You can't get 100,000 kids and throw them into the front line like they did with Vietnam. You can't do that shit anymore. Can you imagine if they tried to call a draft? That would basically be them kicking off the revolution. Nobody would go. Like, so the American military apparatus that exists, right? It's mainly a logistical empire. It's mainly logistics. And what is it that they are logistical about? Maintaining the oil fields, maintaining the resource base that they've captured. Right? But who's actually doing the fighting? Who's actually doing the shooting? Mercenary groups. Right? Mercenary groups. Like Blackwater, which keeps rebranding itself. I actually think its name is now G, like XE or something like that. And you can't successfully maintain a global empire with mercenaries. You just can't do it. Mercenaries are only good to suppress populations. That's the only thing that they can do. Right? They can only... That's why America's advantage moving into the modern era is terrorism. Because they have a fairly strong private contractor base. That's what they call them, private contractors. They're mercenary groups. And mercenary groups are only good for bullying defenseless populations. That's what you use them for. That if you find yourself in a position where you're relying on mercenary groups as the backbone of your defense, it's over for you. Because mercenaries are cowards. They will not fight. Like, they're not going to hold a line. They're not going to do any of that. They're here for money. They're not here for whatever cause you're here for. And I think most of the American military is like this now. That it's primarily bureaucratic. That they're willing to arm populations that have gotten into a position of existential fighting. Right? So we'll fight the Russians to the last Ukrainian. That kind of thinking. But the Americans are not going to be able to actually challenge a serious military. Ever again. Ever again. They're not going to be able to successfully challenge, like, Algeria. They're not going to be able to successfully challenge the Houthis. They're never going to be able to seriously challenge a serious military that's actually pursuing serious objectives. Because all of their military personnel are bureaucrats. That they have special forces so they can assassinate people. And they do. Right? They successfully assassinate people, for sure. You can't win a war that way. Right? So all America's really good at now is terrorism. Assassinating people, special operations. They can coup places, although the coups are getting less successful. Because they had a couple of decades there where people were just like in a state of utter disbelief. They just refused to acknowledge that the CIA was coupping places and that was a possibility. Oh, sure, whatever you say, tinfoil hat guy over here. Sure, it was the CIA that did it, buddy. What a conspiracy theorist. And now if you're talking that way, you're the dummy. Yeah, the CIA does a shit ton of coups. If you don't think the CIA is involved, you're a moron. Like an utter dimwit. And people are aware of it. People all throughout Africa, people all throughout Latin America, people all throughout Middle East, people in China, everybody's aware of it. The CIA's involved, for sure. And if you don't think so, you're a dummy. And it's just that awareness that means that people are more prepared for it. People are more aware of what's going on around them. People are aware of the possibility of what could happen. And so they're able to plan for it. And so the coups are less successful. And I think the nail that put the last nail in the coffin was absolutely Libya. Libya was the moment when the entire, like, if you're in Africa and you watched what happened in Libya, you're like, okay, what, the CIA is involved, for sure. And I'm listening to my leader, and the leader's like, we're not gonna pursue this. I'm gonna be like, what are you, a fucking moron? You saw what happened to Gaddafi, right? Like, you know what can happen here, right? CIA's involved. Hey, see that guy over there? He's CIA, right? Where's he come from? You're checking his credentials, right? Oh, you're just being paranoid. Are you part of the CIA? What's going on over here? That's how I'd be talking. That's how I do talk. Like, Eggs D nails it. The CIA exists? Tinfoil hat. North Korea believes unicorns are real? Wow, so true. Nilo writes, Myanmar is more blue than people might think. What with the West claiming China is propping up their dictatorship. We should talk about Myanmar more. I don't know that much. I don't know enough about Myanmar, frankly, to really talk about it. I mean, if I were to find out that China is involved in Myanmar's politics, I'd be like, yeah, like, for sure. Like, that whole region was the region that was under that was contested under the South Asia Wars, right? The Vietnam War, and China's goal, like Mao's goal, was for sure to take to take Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia, Myanmar, all of that, for sure. I wouldn't have been too surprised. Like, if Mao had have been unopposed, like after defeating the KMT and after forming the People's Republic of China, right? If the Americans hadn't have existed or had have been destroyed like all the other European powers and had been unable to oppose Mao, I think Mao would have just kept going, right? So he just would have kept spreading communism for sure, like for sure. And that's why he had to be stopped, right? That's why he had to be stopped. Nilo continues, Myanmar is falling apart like Ukraine. Looks like they will lose their civil war. Yeah, again, I don't know nearly enough about the situation to really comment on it. Like, I don't really know who the belligerents are. I don't really know much about it. I haven't been paying that much attention to Myanmar. It's just one of those things where I'm like, in the grand scope of history, I don't think that global politics is pivoting on Myanmar. Like, and if I found out that the Americans are funding right-wing radicals in order to foment unrest in the province to try to foment an independence movement in Myanmar to try to get it to pivot away from China towards the West. I'd be like, yeah, that's the playbook. That's what they're doing everywhere. Oh yeah, if Taiwan is a pressure point on China, Myanmar is too. Yeah, I mean, you just take a look at what they're doing in Xinjiang. Like, the Xinjiang province is super important for the West. Like the West, if they could successfully get an independence movement off the ground in Xinjiang and actually get like serious separatist sentiment in there, they would really love that. Xinjiang is a really, really important province to the Belt and Road Initiative. It's like the launching pad into the international community. Lou, good to see you. And yeah, so obviously, like, I do find it a bit odd that they're like pounding the pulpit on Taiwan but not talking about Myanmar. Maybe it's just because it's too obvious. Like, Myanmar is just, it's so obviously like a, but I mean, they keep doing it to Russia with Georgia. There was yet another like coup attempt and yet another situation in Georgia. America's just going to keep it up. They're just going to keep it up. Arizona tea. That's right. One of the billionaires. This whole thing right here. This, you know how much this cost me? $1. Don't tell me we can't keep prices low. It's just psychopaths who want more money. That's it. That's the whole thing. That's the whole game. It's just a rich psycho sitting there being like, I could have another $1 million. Meanwhile, you cut to the Arizona tea guy and people are asking him like, hey, why don't you raise prices along with everything? It's like, I have enough. Why would I need to do that? Like, somehow his wealth has not made him psychotic. Like, that's what I think we should be really studying. There's a couple of them. The CEO the CEO for Costco, for example, I think is like that too. Right? That at some point, I think these guys made a decision along the line, and it somehow has prevented them from receiving brain damage. That they just haven't got the same brain damage that Musk and Bezos obviously have. Where they're just caught up in their own hubris and caught up in their own magnificence and trying to just desperately convince us how amazing they all are. No, it's just the CEO for Arizona Tea. He's just straight up like, yeah, I have enough. What do I need? What do I need another $1 million for? Who cares? You know? What a cool guy. Like, straight up, all he wants to do, his whole trajectory, his whole life, is just to get this iced tea, this really well-made, really well-crafted iced tea in my hands for $1. God bless you, sir. God bless you. You know what, Nilo? You seem really keen on talking about Myanmar. Let's do it. We got a half hour here. It's been a minute since I've done this. Myanmar. My bad. Officially the Republic of the Union of Myanmar. We don't need to go back to the whole like big history. Early city-states, pagan kingdom, Tongu and Konbong. Yeah. We're going way back. Okay. British Burma. Colonialism. We're colonials. We're coming in. We're gonna take your stuff. We're gonna squeeze and squeeze and squeeze and squeeze. We don't know when enough's enough. We're colonials. We're here to stay. We're colonials. We're here to say we're colonials. We have it our way. Boo, boo, boo. We're colonials. We're colonials. Oh, yeah. No, this page is definitely CIA to death for sure. But we, here at the Canadian Commie, have the perception. We have the eyes. The ability to see through the bullshit. Just like straight up. That we know that it is infested with CIA bullshit. So we have an easier way of, like, cutting through it, right? Oh, JTVJ. I don't know if I've ever seen you here before, bud. You made a comment earlier. Good to see you, bud. Glad you're here. Wow, Buddhist monks became the vanguard of the independence movement. Sick. Thanks, JT. Tell your friends. Tell your wife. Tell your mom. Tell the world that I'm here, that I exist. Hello. Greetings and salutations. My hope is that since the righteous execution of that psychopath Thompson by the hero Luigi, alleged, I do think Luigi's still a patsy. That a lot of people are getting a little bit more like, maybe we should do things that actually matter more than just voting. Independence. So colonialism followed by independence. So 1962. So at the end of this period of time, so we've got Mao in China has created the PRC in 1949. So during this period of time, independent republic, there's a coup. But the military leadership stage of coup, 1962. Military rule, basically going on till 2011. The military-led general controlled, the government had been under direct or indirect control of the military. Revolutionary Council, headed by the general. Almost all aspects of society were nationalized or brought under government control, under the Burmese way to socialism. Okay, cool. Which combined Soviet-style nationalization and central planning. Okay. Rad. Yeah, get fucked whatever was happening before. I don't know who these people are, so it's just like okay, let's take a look. In early 2009, a conflict broke out in northern Myanmar for several weeks. Junta troops fought against ethnic minorities, including the Han Chinese, the Wa, and the Kachin. As many as 10,000 Burmese civilians fled to Yunnan in neighboring China. Yeah, so like a refugee crisis, right? Oh, what a great opportunity to pretend like there's a genocide. Civil war has been a constant feature, yeah, blah, 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 since 1948. Blibbity, blobbity, a little bit of commentary. In October 2012, included the ongoing conflicts included the Kachin conflict, a civil war between the Rohingya Muslims, so Christians versus Muslims, the classic, government and non-government groups in the Rakhine state. So really, it's like everybody's just trying to grab power at this point. Armed conflict between ethnic Chinese rebels and Myanmar armed forces resulted in the Kokang offensive in 2015. The conflict forced 40 to 50,000 civilians to flee their homes, seek shelter on the Chinese side of the border, where they were promptly genocided by Xinjiang separatists. Or no, that's wrong. Sorry. They were promptly genocided by the Chineses. The government of China was accused of giving military assistance to the ethnic Chinese rebels. Hardly surprising. Clashes between Burmese troops and local insurgent groups have continued, fueling tensions between China and Myanmar. Period of liberalization. The military-backed government had promulgated a roadmap to discipline flourishing democracy in 1993. It stalled until 2008. So hold on. Period of liberalization. So all of this shit. Oh, here we go. This is all I need to see. U.S. President Barack Obama and Secretary of State Hillary Clinton with Aung San Suu Kyi and her staff at her home in Yangon, 2012. So I was right. It's just the West fucking around in the region to try and separate Myanmar from China. That's all this is. Right? That the West does exactly what the West always does, and they find the nuttiest, kookiest, furthest right Nazi they can find. Right? Or jihadist, or whatever title you want to give the Nazi that they fund. And they go in, murder a bunch of people, seize power, and then exploit their own citizens for the benefit of the West. Right? Oh yes, the establishment of the National Human Rights Commission. The granting of general amnesties for more than 200 political prisoners. Yeah, in response, United States Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, just the absolute witch and demon that she is, visited Myanmar December 2011. Okay. So since 2011, Myanmar has been a de facto Western colony because of because of the Civil War and because of the destruction in that region. Okay, cool. So there were general elections 2015. The results gave the NLD an absolute majority, enough to ensure its candidate would become president. The new parliament convened, blah, blah, blah. Oh, and then there's a coup d'etat. In Myanmar's 2020 parliamentary election, the ostensibly ruling National League for Democracy, the party of State Councillor Aung San Suu Kyi, who is a Hillary Clinton surrogate, so just a witch as far as I'm concerned, competed with various other parties, blah, blah, blah. As the election results began emerging, the Union Solidarity and Development Party was a military affiliated party regarded as a proxy for the military, suffered a humiliating defeat, capturing only 33 of 476 elected seats. The USDP rejected that, urging a new election with military as observers. More than 90 other smaller parties contested the vote, including more than 15 who complained of irregularities. Oh, look, the Westerners faking an election. However, election observers declared there were no major irregularities. I bet you this is literally just like Western source, Reuters, Western source, Myanmar election body. Who's on the election body, right? Okay, that's fine. I don't need to dig any deeper than this. Hillary Clinton is involved, so she's a witch, and that means that she's the enemy, right? For sure. In January 2021, just before the new parliament was sworn in, the NLD announced that Suu Kyi would retain her state councillor role in the upcoming government. In the early morning of February 2021, February the 1st, the day parliament was set to convene, the Tatmadaw, Myanmar's military, detained Suu Kyi and other members of the ruling party. The military handed power to military chief Min Aung Hlaing and declared a state of emergency for 1 year and began closing the borders, restricting travel and electronic communications nationwide. The military announced it would replace the existing election commission with a new one, and a military media outlet indicated new elections would be held in about 1 year. Though the military avoided making an official commitment to that. I gotta tell you, I'm loving this story. I am. I'm loving this story. So, the witch and Nazi Hillary Clinton basically manipulated the power structure, and the CIA helped overthrow the government of Myanmar. And that lasts, how long does that last? That lasts a long time. 2015, the period of liberalization, let's call it. So a decade, about 10 years, right? And then in 2021, the military finally goes, we got to get rid of this witch. Like, there's a witch here, right? Like, we need to get rid of the witch. And so they detain the witch, overthrow the government, and say, yeah, the Nazis are gone now. Like, get rid of these Nazi witches. And by the military leadership continued to extend martial law. Security forces killed 38 people in a single day of violence. Cool. Probably Nazis. You know, Hillary Clinton surrogates. By the second day of the coups, thousands of protesters were marching in the street of Yangon, and other protests erupted nationwide. Yeah, that makes sense. Largely halting commerce and transportation. Despite the military's arrests and killing of protesters, the first weeks of the coup found growing public participation, including groups of civil servants, teachers, students, workers, monks, and religious leaders, even normally disaffected ethnic minorities. The coup was immediately condemned by the United Nations Secretary General, yeah, who gives a fuck, and leaders of the democratic nation, the quote-unquote democratic nations. The U.S. threatened sanctions, what else is new, including a freeze of $1 billion of their assets, what else is new. India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Russia, Vietnam, Thailand, the Philippines, and China refrained from criticizing the military coup. I think that basically says it right there, right? That's basically the whole story, right? Like, here's Myanmar, Burma. Literally just like all the surrounding nations, including like up into Russia and like India and all these places, like Pakistan over here. They're just like, yeah, we're just not going to talk about it. No comment. No comment. Yeah. A United Nations Security Council resolution called for the release of Aung San Suu Kyi and other detained leaders, a position shared by the United Nations High Council for Human Rights. Okay. International development and aid partners, business, non-governmental, and governmental, hinted at a suspension of partnerships with Myanmar. Yeah, blah, blah, blah. Oh no, the capitalists might stop doing deals with the communists. Oh no. The armed wing was named People's Defense Force. The civil war is ongoing as of 2024. So we call it a civil war. Okay. Right. So sounds to me. So here's the story that I just read. Right? Here's the story that I just read. Let's go all the way back to the very beginning. And this is the story, not to the very beginning, because geez, that's like straight up like the Han Dynasty. No, we're not doing that. The Pagan Kingdom. So the British show up 1885 and they colonize the place because that's what they do, right? That lasts a fucking long time. That's literally like 50, 60, 70 years. So 70 years of colonization, British rule in Burma, the Burma campaign. We've all heard that story a million times. I don't need to tell that story. British be British, right? The Burmese, the Myanmarese, or whatever you want to call them, they overthrow independence. Another classic story, right? British colonial rule always ends with an independence movement, and they throw it off. That lasts till 1962, right? Who takes over from 1962? You know what? I don't care that much. Those guys get rid of the British, but they're probably dicks, right? And so the military overthrows them. And from 1962 to 2011, they rule under Burmese way to socialism, i.e., these are the good guys, right? If you're running a country saying, hey, we're going to do the Burmese way to socialism and we're going to do Soviet-style nationalization and central planning, you're the good guys. 2011, the witch, Hillary Clinton, shows up. The CIA foments a whole bunch of underhanded bullshit, as they do. They successfully coup the government there, managed to manipulate the electoral system, take advantage in flaws in the electoral system, and put their own people in place. And for a decade of time, the witch Hillary Clinton and her Uncle Tom friend, Barack Obama, run Myanmar through their witch surrogate. The military finally goes, yeah, this is bullshit. Like, all you're doing is stealing from us, because that's what they do. And so we're just going to overthrow you, which they do in 2021. And for the next 3 years up until the modern era, they've been in a quote-unquote civil war, which is the code that we use for the CIA is assassinating people and funding disruption in the region. And near as I can tell, that's the story of Myanmar. Am I pretty close to the mark, Nilo? You seem to know more about this subject than I do. I'm literally reading a Wikipedia article. So if you'd like to fill any gaps on that, you go right ahead. And I mean, this story that I just told, like the story that I just told about Myanmar, it makes absolutely all the sense in the world. Like it is actually the same story as what they're trying to do in Taiwan. It's the same story that they did in Georgia, right? It's the same story that they did in Ukraine. I'd say the most successful of all of those was Ukraine, that they were most able to get what they wanted out of the situation in Ukraine, although what they wanted ended up completely backfiring on them. I can't imagine, like, hey guys, Russia's asking to be part of NATO and wants to integrate itself into Western systems. This huge, enormous country wants to integrate itself into the liberal democracies of the West and become more like the West. What we should do is absolutely alienate it so badly that it pivots completely and allies with China, something that Richard Nixon actually worked his ass off to prevent. Like, you know who should be really pissed off about the Ukrainian war? Is Richard Nixon and Henry Kissinger. Those guys should be absolutely fucking frothing about it. Like, Richard Nixon's greatest success as a leader, absolutely, from the Western perspective, let me be clear about this, from the Western perspective, was the Sino-Soviet split. That when Joseph Stalin died, he was able to convince Khrushchev that he would be better off moving Russia towards the West, which inspires the Sino-Soviet split, and then he's able to convince China to actually move towards the West at a more rapid pace and gave America a better deal than what Russia gave him. Right? It's just an enormous success. Like, this is something that always pisses me off. I shouldn't say pisses me off. That's too much. That's rude. But it's like, but it is true. Like, people say America lost the Vietnam War. I do not think America lost the Vietnam War at all. I think America got everything it wanted out of the Vietnam War. Because the Vietnam War was a proxy war between itself, Russia, and China. That the playground was here, but the stakes were here. And it won. It won, baby. It got everything it wanted. And now here we are, like 60 years out, right? And China is ascending because of it. Nilo writes, yep, pretty spot on, but there's a lot left unsaid, especially skipping over the differences between the Burmese path to socialism and how that differs with China's approach. But I think that that's sort of the brilliance of the Chinese Communist Party, is that they would look at that and they would basically say, sure, there are differences. That's your path. That to me really shows a lot of wisdom. I think that the Chinese Communist Party is a wise party, and that it the big lessons that it has taken from the history of communism and of the communist parties that have existed is that they don't criticize other nations' pursuits of socialism or communism. That they're not fundamentalists. That they won't say there is one way. Like, that to me really is what is spoiling Western Marxists really badly. There's a lot of fundamentalism in the conversation. There's a lot of, like, there is only one way. This is the one true Marxism. As if there is such a thing. Like, as if there's such a thing. And, like, China has wisely said, we are doing socialism with Chinese characteristics. You are pursuing socialism with your country's characteristics. We acknowledge that those paths are not going to align perfectly. That you have to make decisions based on the material conditions of what's in your country, and we are making decisions based on the material conditions of our country. That we understand that Marxism is a tool. That just because we both have hammers doesn't mean we're going to build the same buildings. And there's no such thing as a one true building. So that to me has really shown a lot of wisdom. And it's a wisdom that I wish we hear that Western Marxists would learn from and pick up. Because I think that it gives China a real advantage in that they can look at other projects and other ideas and other things and look at it not with an eye of condemnation or judgment, but as an eye of like, okay, well, what's working and how can we learn? Like there was this really great, it's on the Discord somewhere. There was this really great conversation, or this really great, I guess conversation that happened between Kim Jong-il and Deng Xiaoping. And it was the two of them meeting. There was like a big conference going on where Deng Xiaoping went to Korea, and the two of them were in conversation, and somebody actually wrote down just their casual conversation with one another as they were going back and talking about their development in the countries and just organizing this meeting and organizing this stuff. And my big takeaway from it was, first of all, these two guys were polite as fuck. Like they were really, really, really generous with one another and really, really considerate of one another. I was really, really taken aback by how lovely they both were with one another. And then, but then also how clear it was that they both carried with them this sort of spirit of saying, well, we don't know how to do that, but you're pursuing that, so we'll learn from you. Like Deng Xiaoping said that once in the conversation. He said, oh, you're pursuing that. That's very interesting. We don't know anything about that. So you'll succeed at that, and then we'll learn from you. And then, of course, Il-sung says the same to him. We'll learn from you, or we'll learn from them, and then we'll teach them. There's always this spirit about them of just like, no, we're not going to dictate to you how to do something, right? Especially when we don't know how to do it. And just that acknowledgement, just that raw acknowledgement of just like, we don't know how to do that. And I feel like Western Marxists could learn a really strong lesson from that and just be like, we don't know how to do a revolution. We don't know how to do that. We've never done that. Right? You know who has? It's the most successful ongoing revolution on Earth today. Oh, Kim Il-sung or Kim Jong-il. I forget, dude. It was the first one. The first one. Because there was the first one, and then there was the second one, and now it's the third one. I'm the greatest. I'm the greatest at this. This is my material analysis. The first one, and then the second one, and then the third one. There's my material analysis. It was the first one. Because the second one was like through the 90s. Right? And that doesn't make any sense. Whereas the first one was like the 50s and the 60s. Right? And that makes a lot more sense. And it's certainly not the third one. Because the third one's in like, he's like the 2000s. He's the Justin Bieber Kim. You got the Leave It to Beaver Kim. You got the Kurt Cobain Kim. And then you got the Justin Bieber Kim. And that's the only way that we Westerners are going to distinguish between which Kim is which. Okay? Kim Il-sung, the first one. That was very rude. That was very rude what I just did. Monsieur, good to see you. Coming in late in the game. We got 5 minutes left in the stream here. We just did a little bit of a deep dive onto Myanmar. Not a deep dive, but like I learned more about Myanmar than I had learned previously, and I found out that the situation that they're trying to pull in Taiwan and the situation they've been doing in Georgia and the situation they've been doing in Ukraine, they had done in Myanmar for about 10 years. That the witch Hillary Clinton was involved in a coup in Myanmar. And of course, that coup gets cooed. Which, good. Get wrecked, Hillary. Dude, I am so glad that Americans fucking rejected Hillary Clinton for Donald Trump. That's the best. That's absolutely the best, dude. What a witch. Just like one of the bleakest, darkest people. Like every single time her fingerprints are on anything, it's just this absolute horror show. She's just such a dark person. Just a dark figure. Like even when I was a kid, when the Bill Clinton sex scandal broke, I was just like the entire time I was just like, she knows. Like, there's absolutely no way she didn't know. Like what? She's just like she's just like a dummy about this? Of course she knows. And I would say that kind of stuff when I was like a teenager, because that's how young people, whoa, what are you talking? She's a victim of infidelity. And so I'm just like, nah, bro, I bet you they're in on it. Like, I bet you that's their shtick. Like, I bet you they do that. Right? Like, I bet they go to parties. Right? Like, I just, and like, the further along we get and the closer to the presidency and the closer to power Hillary Clinton got, the more she really revealed to everybody that she's just an absolute fucking Nazi. Just totally, totally bleak and dark. Like, fomenting a coup in Myanmar, we just read, right? Literally just like, oh, look at here, Myanmar. We overthrew this country for 10 years. Yeah, it's American surrogate now. That's a normal thing for us to do. Fucking Libya. We came, we saw, he died. Cackling witch. Monsieur over on Twitch says, I don't know where it comes from with Hillary. I can understand Victoria Nuland and Chrystia Freeland as their roots. Oh no, I just think it's the ideology of capitalism. Like, that's all. Like, once you understand the religious ideology of capitalism, and you just accept the like nationalism brain, like the whole manifest destiny thing, the end of history thing, right? Oh yeah, full on supremacist with Hillary for sure. Like, if you want to understand the mindset of the American ruling class from like from post World War II to the modern era, you really want to listen to John Mearsheimer. And John Mearsheimer has given a few good speeches about the history of America post-World War II. And what I like about how he has discussed it and how he's framed it is that he's done so from their own arguments and from their own languages. Like, John Mearsheimer is a really, really well-read, really, really well-researched commenter. And he makes the case that the American position post-World War II was that liberal democracy is the best form of government. Liberal democracy. And that the theory is that if every country is a liberal democracy, then liberal democracies won't go to war with one another. That a liberal democracy and another liberal democracy won't go to war with one another. that they'll find other ways to resolve their differences and their communications. And if there is strife within a country, that strife will be resolved internally. And then the two liberal democracies will continue trade and prosperity together. And that's the American narrative post-World War II. And so the goal of the Americans post-World War II is to make the rest of the world liberal democracies. Because once they are liberal democracies, then peace will reign. There'll be no reason for there to be war anywhere. And of course, John Mearsheimer points out that this theory, and why it fails, why it doesn't work, is that it ignores the strength of nationalism. That nationalism is a very powerful ideology and a very powerful idea that exists within people, and that people won't accept an external ideology foisted upon them, no matter how well meant and no matter for whatever reason. They will reject it simply because it's being enforced on them externally. And that the Americans refused, and still do refuse, to acknowledge that just because it's their theory doesn't mean that it'll work given the realities of nationalism. And so I think that articulation from John Mearsheimer is about as clean as you'll get it from the position. And what I like about the way he discusses it is it doesn't condemn anybody. He's not using words like supremacist. He's not using white supremacy or any of that kind of stuff, or Nazism or any of that, the way that I do. He's just very cleanly saying, like, no, like, the Americans very clearly stated, like, we're the indispensable nation. What we say is above and beyond. And so we're going to spread liberal democracy into the world. And once those liberal democracies are spread into the world, peace will reign because liberal democracies won't go to war with one another, which of course ignores nationalism and that people will reject something simply because it's being enforced on them from an external source. And of course, like, if you wanted to go like a little bit further down the line, you'd be like, yeah, and the whole liberal democracy line was just a cover for their naked Nazism, right? That the United States is actually a white supremacist nation that goes throughout the entire world robbing it and colonizing it and destroying it. And they just have this nice little veneer of saying, like, liberal democracy. Yeah. Monsieur says, Mersh is very pro-American, but fucking realistic. Well, the thing that I have always said about John Mearsheimer is that he's a communist with no solutions. Odra Chess writes, hey, I'm back just in time for me to close down the stream, my man. Because we're here at the end of it. Always remember, guys, each and every one of you is a quantum being walking around in quantum energy. These billionaires are spending hundreds of billions of dollars in the hopes you'll never realize it. You'll just stay the good little commodity they need you to be. Revolt. Rebel. Repent. Good luck. We're going to need it.